And we're live. What's up, everybody? You may see a different background, different setup. I am currently in Cyprus. I took a little time off, though. Is it time off if I'm here streaming? Perhaps not. But yeah, not the ideal setup, both in terms of lighting and camera, but it is what it is. The content, I guarantee, though, will be interesting. So we're going to do like we've been doing. This will be a Twitter space. Now, I changed the format. We've done this a few times. And what I noticed is in the format, when I just bring a bunch of people on stage, it becomes toxic. Oh, why did I stream this to Twitter? Now it's redundant. Okay, whatever. I don't care. Because now it's a space and stream to Twitter. So that'll be interesting how that divides people. But the spaces just become toxic. People gang up on one another, insult, interrupt. That's not the vibe. So we're now calling this not Open Dialogue Israel-Palestine. We're calling this Let's Talk Israel-Palestine under this new format where one person is brought on stage at a time for meaningful discussion. So to those just joining the space, thank you for joining. This is also being streamed to Discord and YouTube. Now we're going to have, as I said, one person brought on, but whoever wants to, so Evan is now on stage. Whoever wants to go next, just raise your hand and we'll get you on next. If you want to respond directly to something the current speaker is saying, share a unicorn emoji, and that will be your way to signal to me that you want to respond directly, and then I'll decide if I bring you on or not. We're going to play around with this format. We're going to see how it goes. Real quick, let me do screen share. No. Hold on one second, friends. Yeah, I came to Cyprus for the week. Spontaneous little vacation.
Spot.
Yeah, that's true. It's a popular vacation spot here. Yeah, for Israelis. But they're in a different part. They go to Ayanapa. That's a different part of the city. But yeah, no shortage. For good and for bad. They're not the best travelers. Kind of have a reputation of kind of being loud and obnoxious, but can't speak for all of
The
them.
Palestinians, like from the West Bank or Gaza or Palestinian citizens of Israel, travel a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's much harder to leave Gaza. You need to get let out currently, right? It's either through Egypt or Israel. Both borders are closed. They started letting out more people who need cancer treatment and other specialized treatments that they can't get in Gaza. West Bank is easier because you could leave through Jordan. So it's much harder for them to travel than people from some other countries. But I also heard that there's some Gazan refugees that came to Cyprus during the past 2 years, and I'd love to meet some of them while I'm here. So I'm going to see if I could get in touch with them. And if anyone listening has a contact from that community, please let me know. So yeah, Evan, what's on your mind today? Share thoughts, ask questions, and then we're going to move to the next person. The idea is to have around 5 minutes with each guest, and you could also come back on afterwards, right? So it's not like a one and done. You're welcome to come back afterwards. But yeah, what's on your mind?
So I was just gonna. Do most Israelis support ending the war by now, or now the hostages are back? Is there support for going back or no?
I haven't seen any polling since the hostages have been released, but prior to that, the majority of Israelis did want it to end, though a strong motivation for that for many was that Israelis understood the only way to get the hostages back was through a ceasefire deal. What percentage would like Israel to continue operation and control the entire Gaza Strip? I'm not sure. It very well might be more than half. I think we'll probably have polling in the next few weeks on that, so hard to know. But it's not just driven by, right? So the motivation was not just to get the hostages back. There's many motivations depending on who you ask. getting the hostages back is the primary one. But most Israelis don't want soldiers to keep dying. They see that we're getting isolated internationally because of uh, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, and they don't like that. Many no longer believe Hamas will be defeated militarily. So what's the point? And then some, and unfortunately, this is not the majority, but some genuinely are concerned with the humanitarian issue in Gaza, and for that reason, they want it to stop. And I'll say 20% of Israel's population are Israeli Palestinians, right? They're Israeli Arabs / Palestinian citizens of Israel, depending on how they identify. Most of them are against what Israel did in Gaza from a humanitarian perspective. And what's interesting, of all the populations living between the river and the sea, it's Palestinian citizens of Israel who, in a sense, have the most humanist perspective, because they're the population that overwhelmingly was against October 7th and against Israel's response to October 7th. You have no other population between the river and the sea that overwhelmingly rejected both. It's Palestinian citizens of Israel and what is described in Israel as the far left, which would be the camp I come from. Though worth noting that I'm not really far left if you look at it in the global perspective, but in Israeli society, I'm considered far left.
I mean, this is a bit dated. I remember seeing a Pew poll. I think it was like the early 2010s or so, that showed like what do you have a favorable or like unfavorable opinion of Jews. It's like 97 or something percent of the Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza had unfavorable opinions of Jews, but 56% of the citizens of Israel had favorable opinions. So it's like a sea change of opinion in that regard.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you live amongst people and you interact with them and you're having positive interactions, you don't really grow up for hate for those people, right? So Palestinians in the West Bank, their primary interactions with Jews are settlers or soldiers, neither of whom treat them with dignity and respect. I mean, there are instances where they are treated well, but overwhelmingly their interactions with Jews in the West Bank are not positive. So you grow up having that impression about Jews and Israelis. If you live in Gaza, you very well may have never met a Jew. You only know us from our bombings. So what are you going to think about us? If you're a Palestinian citizen of Israel, you live amongst Jews, you get to know them, you work together, you study together, and then you're going to have a much more positive understanding. So it's all about, it just shows that we could very much coexist and live together if we're having positive experiences with one another. You know, that is the key.
What part of Israel do you live in? Like,
I'm in the Western Galilee, which is in the north, which
do
is
you do you have neighbors who are like Palestinians or
Oh
Arabs or?
yeah. I mean, the Galilee is amazing, and 50% of the Galilee are not non-Jews. So they're either Christians, Muslims, or Druze, and we all get along so well. We travel to each other's towns. It's very much harmonious coexistence there. The non-Jews living there, they will have complaints about the government and changes they want to see in the state. So it's not like they're saying they're fully happy being Israeli, but their relationship with Jewish Israelis living in the area, there's no tension whatsoever. We all get along very well, and it should show us what's possible to achieve between the river and the sea. You know, doesn't only need to be in the Galilee or the Western Galilee.
Is it the same in like Haifa or other places?
Haifa has good coexistence. Again, I haven't spent too much time there, but from what I know, coexistence is pretty good there. There will be complaints about systemic issues. So the main complaints you hear from Palestinian citizens of Israel is they don't get permits to build for building on property. They don't. The police isn't cracking down on crime in their neighborhoods, and they just don't feel part of the state. They're non-Jews living in a Jewish state, so it's hard for them to feel fully included. And there's just a lot of racism that they face from Jewish Israelis. Racism, which
I thought you said there's like coexistence though. Like, is that really?
well, yeah. But so imagine. Let's just take a random percentage. Let's say that 50% of Jewish Israelis have some level of fear or mistrust of Palestinians. Not even overt racism, which there's no shortage of that. But imagine it's not even overt racism. It's just fear and mistrust. Imagine living in a society where every day you're meeting people who fear you or don't trust you. That has an impact on your well-being. So it really depends where you go and who you meet. So in the Galilee, they're not, most of the people they're meeting don't have fear and mistrust of them, but people leave the Galilee, they go to other parts of the land, they have sometimes negative experiences. Many of the Palestinian citizens of Israel I speak to, they actually say they like being Israeli, but they don't consider themselves Zionist, because they're like, why would I be Zionist? I'm not Jewish. I don't want it to be a Jewish state. I want it to be a state for all the people. But yes, I do like living on the land. I do want to stay here. I just want the state to change to be a state for all of us, which is a very reasonable request.
Is there a difference between like Christian and Muslim
Wait, but Evan,
citizens
with
in terms
that,
of how
sorry,
they
sorry to cut
think?
you off. I just want to, I do want to keep the rotation going, so I'm gonna bring on
Okay.
Safe right now. But there's no one after him, so feel free to just raise your hand again, and we'll get you back on eventually.
Okay.
Awesome, Evan. Thank you. Safe. With that, I invited you on, so whenever you're ready, floor is yours. What's on your mind? Questions, comments, and for those joining, the format we're doing today, just to keep it less toxic, more productive, we're going to just have one person on at a time, a little back and forth. If somebody who is on is saying something that one of the listeners wants to respond to, share a unicorn emoji. Wait, can you do every emoji? Oh no, they limit the emojis you could do. Damn, what's the neutral emoji? Okay, do the hand raise emoji. That's easy enough. And then if you raise your hand, it means you want to respond directly to the person speaking now. And I'll decide if to bring you on to have a little back and forth. So it'll either be two people on stage, myself and a guest, or three people. That'll be the max we're going to do today, and we'll see how it goes. Safe, what's up, man? What's on your mind?
Yo, Other, what's up? I
Doing
think
well.
this is I think this is the first time I joined your space. Nice to see you.
Yeah, I'm glad you joined. Welcome.
I'm glad I joined as well. So is there like a certain topic you guys were talking about, or just general talk about Israel
Yeah,
and Palestine?
just general. Evan had a bunch of questions that interest him. You could also ask questions, or you could share your perspective on something. I know that there was recently an IDF soldier was just killed in Gaza, which was been followed by lots of bombings. So the ceasefire is on the brink of destruction, you could say. Uh, so maybe you want to comment on that. Maybe you have some other thoughts. Yeah, whatever's on your mind.
I don't know if maybe because we follow each other, you know a bit about what I post. Just to tell people where I'm from, I'm Palestinian. I'm from Gaza. I lived more than half of my life there. I eventually decided to move to Europe back in 2015. You know, to look for a better life. You know, life in Gaza was not the best. I think there is a certain misconception about the people of Gaza, and I think it's dangerous. The Hamas label, not to take anything away from what how severe the genocide has been on the Palestinians in Gaza. I'm saying they do use the excuse of Hamas to kill as many people as they can. But I also believe as a Palestinian that Hamas has done nothing but harmful things for the Palestinian cause, and they have eventually been an idiotic tool for the right wing extremist Israeli government that empowered them in order to weaken the Palestinian side that is recognized worldwide and should have had the chance to be the sole representative of the Palestinian people. I think Hamas and the right wing of Israel have done their best in order to ruin this quote unquote peace agreement. But I also believe that also the left wing government right now is also not doesn't have the most peaceful approach. And I think in order to have peace forward, you have to end the occupation and the apartheid, give a two-state solution, and maybe people can talk about peace and coexistence. I think as long as there is no justice, like there are settlements in the West Bank, as long as East Jerusalem is still occupied, I don't think peace is possible.
Thank you for sharing, Saif, and I agree with pretty much everything you just said. It's interesting because Israelis say, "Give us peace and we'll end the occupation," and then Palestinians say, end the occupation and we'll give you peace." There's kind of looking at it from different perspectives, but it's very hard to expect there's this expectation in Israeli society that we will continue to maintain this immoral and unsustainable status quo until Palestinians just decide to accept us and accept their fate, which is a very unrealistic expectation of a population. People generally resist their oppression, so we need to make drastic change to change the status quo, which creates an environment that um, orients us towards peace. The current environment orients us towards radicalization and ultimately violence. So I'm definitely with you on that, and it's just good to hear. You said you're very critical of the IDF and you're critical of Hamas. Very sensible position that not nearly enough people have. We are somehow convinced that one needs to be good and the other must be bad, when both have done horrific things. And it's not about comparing who's worse and who's done worse, but we could just acknowledge reality for what it is. We don't need to appreciate one or support one in order to hate the other. Like, we could just acknowledge that Hamas has been horrible leadership for the Palestinians, and we wish them better leadership, and that the IDF carried out some horrific atrocities in Gaza and maintain a brutal military occupation in the West Bank. Nothing there is mutually exclusive. So I appreciate you saying that as well. I have a question for you, though. So
Yeah.
many fellow Israelis, this is one of the most common things I debate with them, is that Palestinians will never accept any solution, and they're always going to continue to try to kill Jews until the land is rid of Jews. Now, I have a response to this when this comes up in discussions and debates. But you, as a Gazan, I do want to hear your perspective, how you think Gazans, let's say there's a two-state solution. Let's say there's no more siege on Gaza. Gazans are free. Do you think there is, like, how would Gazans respond to that? Would they say, okay, cool, that's step one, now we need to keep fighting to liberate all the land? Or will Gazans accept that as a good solution and just build, try to live their lives? What's your impression on how they would respond?
No, I can tell you. My voice is clear, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I can tell you categorically. At least 90% of Gazans are tired of the sound of bullets. They do want peace. The word coexistence is a bit fishy, because I think the damage is too big for coexistence at the moment. I think peace needs to be implemented, and that the two-state solution means peace, I would guess. For me personally, if you also ask me, I don't want to throw every single Jewish person in the sea. It's not my like ideal thought to go around and say all Jews must be eliminated. Like, that's not what I want. But I want justice. I want my people to have a state. I want them to have their own army. I want us to have our airport. I want us to move freely in the West Bank. I also want the Palestinians inside the 48 lands to not be persecuted over a tweet or a Facebook post where they would tell them that you're Hamas or Hamas. I don't think there's much democracy like Israel claims to be the democracy of the Middle East. There is no democracy there. It's not enough for you to accept all kinds of people and try to like portray this image of yourself, like of being the democracy of the Middle East. It's not a democracy. Like I told you, Adam, I don't generally differentiate between any people. I think all people must be respected, but you have to acknowledge the other person's or the other people's right to exist and give them their rights in order to expect respect and acceptance in return. As long as you oppress people, you're not gonna get that. And again, I'm not excusing Hamas whatsoever. My stance is known on them. I think they have been bad for the Palestinian people. Having said that, Netanyahu and the whole Knesset keeps talking about how the Palestinian Authority breeds terrorism and they should not rule Gaza. They claim they don't have a partner in peace, that they can't talk to someone from the Palestinian side, but they are the reason that is taking place. And they're doing that intentionally in order to kill the Palestinian cause.
Yeah, I mean, the whole, the Israelis have been indoctrinated into thinking that there's really no difference between the PA and Hamas, which is just ridiculous. The PA recognized Israel's right to exist in '93, and we have security cooperations with them for decades now. And the only reward they got was more settlement expansion. That moderate stance and that cooperation with Israel did not lead them to a state or to equality, which in the Palestinians see that and like, so compromise, maybe it doesn't work. Negotiations, maybe it doesn't work. It very much, Israel not rewarding the moderate entity, which is the PA, and that doesn't mean they're not corrupt and don't have issues. But of the three governments ruling the land, the PA, Likud, and Hamas, the PA is the most moderate, the most willing to compromise. That should be rewarded with should have been rewarded with with something to just show that there really is, through negotiation and compromise, there's a clear path to peace. But Israel did the exact opposite. Yeah. Saif, thanks for sharing your thoughts. We're now, so for those just joining, we're doing a new format where we only bring on one person at a time. This way we give people more time to speak without interruptions, without personal attacks. And so one at a time. So right now the lineup goes, we have David coming on next, then Rose, and then Omar. And for those on Discord, I see a lot of people are raising their hands on Discord. The private session on Discord will happen in an hour. So if you do want to join beforehand, I just shared a link. Just join this space and raise your hand. And Saif, it's great to finally talk to. And please stick around if you want to hop back on once we go through this rotation.
I don't know for how long like I'll be able to stay, but like thank you for the opportunity, and I'll try to hop in like when I can.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing your thoughts, man. Okay, we now have David. David, you have been given speaking rights, so floor is yours whenever you're ready.
Hey, Saif. Thanks so much for coming on. We very rarely get to hear directly from Gazans.
Oh, wait, David.
I was hoping.
Okay, you're Shadow, right?
Yep.
Okay. So I know David personally just by his other username. Saif, stick around because I'd love for I know David has a question or two for you. So please stick around. Cool, David, all you.
I was hoping you could explain sort of what is the internal dialogue of Gazans as to what their options were and what the history was of some of the deals. So, for example, do Gazans, so a couple of questions and you can tell me, answer whichever ones you find interesting. Did Gazans think that they had the option of basically renouncing any political claims to liberate the rest of Palestine and in return just have a state in Gaza? So no blockade, no strikes, nothing, just have a state? That's the first question. And then the second question is some of the memoirs of the hostages that have been written since they came back from Gaza sort of paint a bleak picture where everyone in Gaza is basically convinced that Israel is just bent on cleansing them and nothing other than sovereignty and an army of their own could protect them from that. Can you sort of explain what communications did the people who worked in Israel from Gaza, what did they tell the Gazans about what Israelis believed or what their ultimate, political project was, or what trade-offs they could make for coexistence? And then lastly, you're talking about the PA, and I agree that they're in a completely different moral universe from Hamas. But in 2008, Ehud Olmert offered what might have been an okay deal, basically everything except recognition of refugee rights. And I think in literally 2 years ago, he came back and asked Abu Mazen, hey, I'm no longer the prime minister, but what if we work out a deal, you sign it, and Abu Mazen had no interest in signing. He just sent, one of his underlings to sort of sign on the dotted line, but it wasn't really a big thing. I'm very confused, and I think a lot of people are confused whether or not Palestinians actually want a state more than they view themselves as a refugee movement. And whenever I talk to, I've never met a non-Palestinian who's interested in two states. They just think that a one state is the only just solution, which I completely respect and understand. I'm just not sure if it's practical. Can you sort of respond to whatever of that you found worth engaging with?
Safe, you here? Because you're muted, so I don't know if you're trying to speak. Safe, you with us? Okay. So Shadow, I think we'll keep things moving until Safe gets back, and then we'll continue that back and forth. But so just stick around until he comes back. Is there anything else you want to share or ask until that happens?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, cool. So now we are going to bring on Rose. We're going to bring you on, and then we're going to move it over to Omar, and then Altoids. Rose, welcome back. Good to see you here. You're also muted.
I couldn't hear you. Now I can.
Oh, okay. Welcome.
Thank you. How are you, Adele?
I'm
Great
good.
job on the protective presence. Super amazing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm gonna do a few more until olive season is over. It's sad, you know, I go and then I still see videos of Palestinians getting attacked by settlers. So it seems
You
like
see the list that the settler terrorists posted? They literally posted a proud list of how many attacks they committed, how many cars they burned, how many olive trees they burned, how many people they beat up.
no, I did not see that, but that's fucked. And we need more people out there. The fact that it's still happening means there's not enough protective presence, you know. So I am in Cyprus now. I came to take a little spontaneous vacation, but this weekend I am back. I'm back, and I'm gonna keep going out there. So, and if anybody here is living on the land between the river and the sea, and you want to join one of these protective presence olive picking days, please DM me because we do need more people there.
I'll try and find that list and I'll post it for you. David, I'm not sure what the objective behind your questions were. I have to say I found them a little bit inappropriate. I will say Safe is one of my favorite people ever. And I think that taking accounts of people who were hostage and did not meet more than just a few individuals within their entire captivity and taking their words as something that represent 2 million people is extremely sinister. Just asking that question, I find it problematic. But what was your objective behind? What were you trying to understand? I'm genuinely curious.
Sure. So I wasn't making any claims. I'm getting the general sense that both societies are convinced that the other society wants to destroy them and wouldn't be willing to live peacefully. And because of that, might be fighting a lot more intensively than they would need to. So I'm trying to figure out if there's like some words that one group can say to the other that the other group would just be confused by, that would just shatter their
What
internal narrative, what they think of the other side. So I'm
what
just trying
are
to
you
understand.
okay, what are you basing that assumption on in terms of Palestinian society?
I I mean, a couple of things. One, I think that the choices that Hamas makes don't make any sense. Like, they seem deeply counterproductive. I think there's also public polling that says that most Palestinians expect that Israelis want to kick them off of the land, destroy them, and so forth. And thirdly, I think that there were some opportunities for compromise historically, and I don't see examples of, I guess, dissent. Like, I don't see like a public conversation saying, we made a mistake, we should have tried something else. And, because of those things, I get a sense that maybe the two societies don't understand each other. But also, I would just expect that on priors. I know that there's very little intermarriage between Palestinians in Gaza and Jews in Israel. That's kind of obvious. There's not a lot of intermingling. So I would just expect that they would have a very poor understanding of each other because they don't have any friends in common who they can just trust. And then also just like looking at Al Jazeera and Middle East Eye, et cetera, et cetera.
So let's start from
Rose, real quick, I just want to add something that I think will make this little conversation easier. I just want to point out that I've known David for quite some time, and he's definitely on team humanity. So nothing he's saying is coming from a place of trying to demonize or blame. He has a very deep desire to better understand the perspectives of both people, to just get better informed and see if he could help by sharing ideas that he think would progress a peaceful path
okay,
forward.
that's good. But I think it's more important to start with the fact that, first of all, there's whether it's conscious or not, there's a lot of bias behind, especially the first statement. If we're talking about Hamas, we are talking about Hamas. We're not talking about the Palestinians. So whatever Hamas did or did not, I had a phone call. Whatever Hamas did or did not do does not reflect the Palestinian people, not or Gazans for that matter. Hamas was elected over 17 years ago. They got a little bit over. Somebody's nagging me on the phone. A little bit over 48% of the votes, but the current population of Gaza, less than 8% of them literally elected Hamas. So there is no reflection when it comes to Hamas of the Palestinian sentiment. So whatever you think of Hamas, do not apply it to the entirety of the Palestinian people. Second of all, when it comes to willingness to compromise, I'm not going to address polling because I think that's a touchy subject.
Someone's really blowing you up.
I think, yeah. In terms of polling, I think it's a problematic subject. There are different institutes who do that. Some of them have credibility problems, and I think the ability we have to deduce is limited in that perspective, especially when you're trying to poll 2 million people that are under a genocide. So, putting that aside, one of the things that people seem to think is that the narrative that is being pushed by Zionist propaganda of there is no partner on the other side, or is extremely nefarious. Because if you are actually aware of the fact, it's the opposite that is true. And even I am still learning certain facts. For example, the last time that there were actual conversations between Olmert and Abbas was willing to compromise on 100,000 right of return, which is extremely symbolic considering the fact that over a few millions are eligible. The idea of no partner on the other side is not applicable to the Palestinians. It's much more applicable to Israeli society. And every action that is taken by the Israeli government and the state is aimed at creating the situation where they can claim that without any factual base. Does that start to make more sense?
So absolutely, nothing that you said is new. In fact, I'm actually even stronger on the first thing that you said. I think that even like when Hamas was elected, they were just elected on a platform of no corruption and no crime. And it's not like they were, they didn't have a platform of we're going to destroy Israel, and they had some very, very corrupt opponents. So I don't blame anyone at all. And I don't think that who you vote for has any bearing on Literally anything. I completely agree that it's very hard to know what people think in closed societies, especially when they're oppressed, like Hamas does. I completely agree with you. And on the what a boss would agree to, I have a very different interpretation because I feel like if he wanted two states, he would basically jump at any opportunity to say yes to
He
whatever he could
did,
get.
but again, he did. That's what I'm trying to point out. That I personally think that he's willing to compromise the right of return is outrageous, but he was willing to do so. He was
What
willing to
is
do
your
so.
understanding of the 2008 offer or 2 years ago from Olmert, the exact same offer? What is your
No,
understanding of why?
throughout the entire idea of peace talks between Israelis and Palestinians, there were always two sensitive points that people point out, which is Jerusalem and the right of return. Jerusalem was something that they were able to come to an agreement about, I think, even doing Oslo or the Wyatt Accords. When it comes to the right of return, and this actually exposes the under evil belly of Zionism and all its glory, because the one thing Israelis or Zionists are terrified of is losing the Jewish majority. And that is why the concept of the right of return to all eligible Palestinians is terrifying to them. Because, granted, if all Palestinians who are eligible will be granted the right of return, there will be no Jewish majority, which personally I have no problem with. But if you want to say that they didn't jump on it, for the head of the PLO, the president of the PLO, to be willing to accept a symbolic 100,000 right of return with Israel's acknowledgement of the atrocities, I find it outrageous, but he was willing to accept it. He jumped on that offer, like you said. The people who rejected it were Israelis, and that offer has not changed. And that goes for the proposal from the Arab League. That goes to the Saudi French proposal that was just on the table and was derailed by Trump. To say that there is no partner on the other side is far more applicable to Israel than it is to Palestinians. Israel has done everything in its power to take down every leader that represented a potential unity for Palestinian society. The entire policy of divide and conquer has been a doctrine and a modus operandi they've been using since day one. And again, we can see it now in Gaza under the idea of dividing Gaza and having local gangs running the show. And to Bibi's statements on its own, Hamas is an asset, the PA is a liability. So the entire idea, divide and conquer policy, I can send you the report by B'Tselem. It's very comprehensive and very clear, is the modus operandi of the Zionist entity for a very, very long time, preventing unified representation of the Palestinians that can actually lead to unity and a cohesive, coherent voice of the Palestinian people is something that Israel has actively derailed it time and time again, whether be it by divide and conquer or simply by taking down those voices as leaders, putting them in jail, assassinating them, so on and so forth. So the concept of there is no partner on the other side is based on, well, frankly, lies.
Yes,
David,
I completely agree with.
David, real quick, we're going to
Sure.
give you final thoughts here, and then we're going to move on to some more guests. So just keep that in mind, and we will keep
Yes,
the rotation going. So you're welcome back on once we get through everyone.
Yes, I completely agree with everything you said. I hope that they free Marwan Barghouti, and I hope that elections in the PA happen, and I hope that Hamas is allowed to participate so that whoever is elected has full legitimacy to either keep fighting or accept whatever deal they choose to
Quick
do.
question. Do you know why there haven't been elections in the PLO until today?
The PLO expects Hamas to win, and Israel expects that Hamas will win, and because of that, neither of them want elections.
No, the PLO tried to have elections multiple times, but in order for them to have an elections that are recognized by the international community, they also have to include East Jerusalem, something that Israel has prevented time and time again. Hence, they are unable to conduct elections that will be recognized by the international community and ensure their ongoing support by that community. So again,
Yes,
Israel's fault.
I understand that that is one of their stated reasons. I would not. The reason I don't believe that is because they made sure that Marwan Barghouti was not released in any of the previous deals, and they have a very long history of making sure that no one charismatic who might threaten any of their political interests will ever rise to the top in their organization. But
Marwan
I
and
understand what you're.
Barghouti, look, I'm not going to give an opinion about the PLO and whether it's corrupt or not. That's up to the Palestinians to talk about. But I will, however, address the fact that Israel is a main cause. That you're not wrong. There may be those political intrigues within Palestinian society, but the cause for no election was not for lack of will or attempt by the PLO. It's literally factually on the ground, because if they have an elections that do not include East Jerusalem, those elections are not recognized as a free democratic elections, and they lose support from the international community. So you can say that there are political corruptions or interest involved. That might be so, but you cannot erase the very factual reality that they have tried multiple times and have been unsuccessful because Israel is preventing it. Full stop.
Yes, I completely agree that Israel has a very strong divide and conquer strategy that they have stuck to relentlessly and have never tried building up Salam Fayyad or any other Palestinian that they
It's
would think would actually be both representative and powerful enough to build a constructive two-state. I agree. Just the only point that I wanted to make so that you understand where I was coming from initially with the question is I don't think it's possible to convince Israelis that they would not be genocided as a minority in a one-state situation. My only hope is to persuade them that two states would be a stable, non-violent solution. And that's why I wanted to talk to Saif and ask him, is it primarily a refugee movement, or are they primarily focused on sovereignty such that he really expects that they would accept no right of return if they couldn't get that? That was the purpose of my question.
With
I
that,
will recommend looking at polls data that came out just today, which is problematic in some points. But the very last question that was asked is, how do Palestinians perceive to be the major objective of the Palestinian movement? Overwhelming majority, if I remember correctly, it was either 67 or 76. I'm not sure. I only read it once. Consider the Palestinian state within the 67 borders as the primary objective of the Palestinian cause. So all those statements are vacant because they are based on nothing. But I'll let Omar take it from here.
thank you, Rose.
Uh,
Thank you, David.
thank
Great hearing from you both. Omar, what's up, man? Welcome.
thank you. I just wanted to comment just like on some parts. I don't know about David's intentions, but I think he has been spreading some false things, and I want to also add some. But I mean, like regarding Olmert's offer in 2007 or 8, I think it was in 2008. Um, he was a political lame duck. It was very known both within the PLO and also among the Israelis that any decision they taken in such negotiations, it wouldn't have any fruit because he was under corruption charges, and he didn't have the political mandate. So regardless of Abbas's response, it wouldn't have led to anything. I agree. He should have he should have responded with some counter proposal, which he actually did, if I remember it right. Um, but I mean, he didn't say no. Even by Olmert's own words, he didn't say no. Just getting that off. Um, yeah, I also wanted to add, I think we need to see the entire issue between Israelis and Palestinians. Like there is too often it is like a focus on like two equal parts, or um, you try to like put all blame on the Palestinians, but the reality is more like I think there is a form of supply and demand kind of perspective which needs to be seen through that lens. For instance, that Israeli right wing has been growing now for the at least for the 15 years and more than so. Um, Despite the PLO has been still very consistent in its position for a two-state solution, it has been very consistent in wanting to negotiate. But the Israeli side has been actively opposing it, and this sheds a light on the issue, which is, I think, actually you need to see the issue from its core issue. It's from the Israeli side. It's not possible for you to have a government that is pushing too much in a peaceful direction when Israeli government is trying to even try to approach a two-state solution. It will eventually lose the election, or even in Yitzhak Rabin's case, the person would be assassinated. I think the safety issue is a very comprehensive part, or like have any other political issues. But I mean, like when people see the Palestinian side and talk about the rejectionism, it's very interesting because when we actually look at the proposals during the last, let's say, 30 years, um, around, you can see even some longer than that. The PLO has been in 1988 accepting the two-state solution. Yeah, it did not initially recognize Israel in 1988, but it did in 1993 in the Oslo Accords. It did practically agree to a Jewish state to live with Israel as that. And it wasn't Yasser Arafat who was assassinated after the Oslo Accord. It was Yitzhak Rabin, as mentioned. And I think then when you see through this lens, Hamas has been growing since the Oslo Accord. It is due to the failures of the agreement, which has been very catastrophic for the Palestinian side. When the PLO is trying to argue for a peaceful method to achieve a two-state solution through peaceful method, they're always um, like there will always be the argument that we have tried peace, we have tried non-violence, and what we see is there are increasing settlements in the West Bank. We're seeing increasing Israeli military violence. They're slaughtering thousands of Palestinians. And when you see through that perspective, um, uh, I mean, it's very difficult for you to make this argument that through diplomacy and through other non-violent methods that you will be able to achieve peace. I still believe that the diplomacy is more efficient, but I can actually see that when you are under oppression, when you are under difficult circumstances, you cannot make the most rational debate. You cannot make the most um, you cannot like make how can I say it? I mean, you cannot expect the ones who live under the most dire circumstances to be more politically pragmatic than those who are actually having very high living standards. They are not under active security threat. I cannot say that an Israeli guy living in Tel Aviv, having no security problems compared to Palestinians in the West Bank or Gaza, not having any. I mean, like you can move how much you want. You can go to the beach. You can do. You have a lot of freedoms and like Palestinians who live under Israeli occupation do not have. Um, and I mean, like when the direction is about talking about two equal sides or two like equal to blame, I think it's um, in the discourse it absolves the elephant in the room from blame.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing, Omar. Always appreciate hearing from you.
I think this is what actually should be more. This is what should actually be. How can I say, like this is what should actually be more focused on this side has the power dominance when one side is oppressing the other. I think that side has more responsibility. That side must be more seen as like there is one aggressor and one oppressed. This should be the main point. Sorry for talking long here, but yeah, I mean, this is my basic perception of this.
Thanks for sharing. And yeah, it's the most any Palestinian faction could do is try to convince Israel to change the status quo, but they cannot themselves change the status quo. That is entirely in the hands of Israel. So clearly there's one party with much more power, much more control over the situation. And I don't want to say the future lies solely in their hands, but Israel does have the power to change the status quo in many different directions. What we can ask of Palestinians, or hope Palestinians do, is maybe act in a way that increases the chance that Israel changes the status quo. But ultimately, they don't have full control of their destiny, not even close. And we just need to acknowledge that reality.
I mean, I agree. I mean, like you can always make the how can I say, like, the conditions better from the Palestinian side, but I mean that to a very large extent it depends on how Israel is acting towards Palestinian. Um, to actually be able to have a legitimate political leadership, you need to have also public support. The PLO has invested a lot of its political capital undermining the public support in order to be able to negotiate a peaceful settlement with Israel. And when PLO is being actively undermined, you can even say humiliated by Israel, I can see why people will then say, you see, Hamas is the only option, Hamas is the only alternative for us to achieve liberation. And when there is a form of hopelessness, which people have been having now for many decades, I think Oslo was like it was a bubble of hope for many Palestinians, even Israelis. But then nothing happened out of there. It solidified the oppression structures. The settler violence increased, and settlements are increasing. And I mean, how can I say it in a good way? I mean, like, from the Palestinian side, we have seen active losses for over 30 years, while Israelis have been, they haven't been losing much on the occupation. It has been, even internationally, it has been very much normalized. People will talk about, like, the UN has passed some. United Nations General Assembly passing through some like resolutions that Israel occupation is bad, it should end, and everything like that. But in practical measures, there have been no economic sanctions. There have been no any political actions to hold Israel accountable. And when there is no accountability, and when you are when you're exercising your violence on others, I think this is making it appealing even to continue doing what you're doing, because when there is no consequence for your actions, why would you have any reason to stop? Not
Right.
all people think out of the lens of morality.
Yeah.
I see some Israelis are being upset, but I'm just spitting facts.
Yeah, I mean, it's people are naturally going to be upset when an indoctrinated worldview meets reality. And perhaps if someone believes that is Omar's view is the wrong view, raise your hand. We'll bring you on, and you could also share your thoughts. This is a space for anybody to share. But a lot of people are just more comfortable doing laugh emojis instead. But Omar, thank you. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. We're going to continue the rotation. Always appreciate hearing from you. It's going to go, we're going to bring Altoids on, then Edwards, then Jenny, then David, and then Blue Block. So that will be the order. Okay. Let's see. Hold on. Altoids, where'd you go? Okay, Altoids, you're going to miss your turn because I don't see you now. Re-raise your hand in the next 5 seconds, or you'll need to wait till the next person. Okay. Edwards, we're bringing you on. Floor is yours, Edwards, whenever you're ready. Nevio, I see you're asking where are you in line. So you need to request to speak, not just raise your hand, because otherwise I won't. I'm gonna miss some of the emojis. Edwards, I see you're on here. So what's up, man? Floor is yours, but you're still muted. So
Hey, how's it going?
good, good. Welcome.
Yeah, I was just listening to some of the things that some of the previous speakers were saying, and I don't know. I think after over the past 2 years and having listened to a lot of things, I find it unfathomable how people just can't understand things based within the context of reality, and it's driving me mad. It really is. I mean, even listening to just some of the points that Emrose touched on, and this drives me crazy in particular when she constantly uses the word Zionist. Because as Emrose well knows, a Zionist is a person who believes that the Jewish people have the right to a nation in their ancestral homeland in what is Israel. And a Zionist is a person who believes that the Jewish people have the right to self-determination in that nation. So to demonize words like this consistently is just ignorant at this point. And like bastardizing words constantly, like genocide, again, for example. Like Israel has not committed genocide in Gaza. Genocide requires specific intent, not simply the fact that civilians die in war. So the issue, like I mean, the Palestinians, the Arabs who refer to themselves as Palestinians, never wanted a state to begin with. That's not what this is about. They were offered one on 5 separate occasions, and they walked away from every offer that was ever on the table. And I mean, the issues again, even in Gaza, Emrose touched on as well about the elections. I mean, and again, even using words like occupation drives me mental because I think, as well as most people have come to understand now as well, Israel completely pulled out of the Gaza Strip in 2005 when they passed their Disengagement from Gaza Act, and over 10,000 Jewish people were forcibly removed by the IDF. All IDF installations in the region were destroyed, and the Arabs were given complete autonomy over Gaza. They had the right to self-governance, and they voted for Hamas, an Islamic jihadist death cult and prescribed terrorist organization who have ruled the Gaza Strip for 20 years. And the blockade, again, which was mentioned earlier on by Emrose, who's now putting up her hand, started in 2007. But we have to ask the questions, why? Why does Israel and Egypt have a blockade? Well, because Hamas have been firing rockets into Israel since 2007. Stop firing rockets into Israel, stop launching wars. I think it was the other speaker before me as well was talking about Judea and Samaria, or West Bank as he refers to it. The whole idea as well of the Arabs who refer to themselves as Palestinians in Judea and Samaria, zones A and B. I mean, you can't let on that these people are just innocent victims constantly being oppressed. It makes no sense. He never even brought up the fact about, like, between the year 2000 and 2005, they launched waves of horrifying suicide bombers into Israel. Over 1,000 people were killed between 2000 and 2005, including 148 suicide bombers. Why is that never mentioned? Why is Palestinian terrorism never mentioned and talked about by these people? Like the Palestinian Liberation the Palestinian Authority has their pay-to-slay program embedded in their political policy.
All right, Edwards.
That's not
Edwards.
incentivized further.
I just want to just real quick, because you made a lot of points. You've made a lot of points that are based on misconceptions and misunderstanding, and it's going to be hard to address all of them. So,
well, there are misconceptions because, as I said when I began to speak, I like to speak about things based within the context of reality. People are not.
Fine. So let me ask you a question. So, you say it's all within the context of reality, but you have all these claims that are very much based on just a very deep pro-Israel bias and not just having the most
well, they're facts. You can read about all the things that I've talked
about. Don't interrupt. I'll get to there. So you said there's no genocide in Gaza because it requires special intent, and there's no special intent. How do you know?
Because if Israel wanted to commit genocide in Gaza, they could have done it in a weekend. Also, Israel provided over 1 million tons of aid.
Hold on. I want to address that point.
They have
So-
sent aid stations. They target Hamas, not the civilians.
Edwards, real quick. So genocide does not mean killing as many people as possible in as short amount of time as possible. Do you agree with that? Okay. Let's say Israel's goal was to destroy some part of the Palestinian population, but they wanted to do so while maintaining plausible deniability because the world is watching, because they require international support. So this isn't like Rwanda or the Holocaust. This is trying to destroy the population while being able to say, oh, it wasn't on purpose. If that, let's just assume for a moment that was their intention, and you could see clear incentive for them to want to do that. A, it increases the chances that Gazans will voluntarily leave. B, it could increase the chance that Hamas steps down from power. And C, it could create a deterrent against future attacks. So there's a clear incentive for Israel to want to harm the Palestinian people and intentionally harm the Palestinian people. And we see actions like the destruction of the healthcare system, their water systems. We've seen mass arrests and torturing of prisoners, many of whom we discover to be innocent. We see large swaths of Gaza turn into no-go zones where anyone's shot on sight. So it's not. There's a clear incentive, and then there's also actions that support that. And so my question to you: let's say this was Israel's goal, to commit genocide while maintaining plausible deniability. How would their actions in Gaza look any different from what they currently look like?
Well, as I say, like, it's a great tragedy when civilians become the casualties of war, especially when it's women and children. But it happens in every war. If Hamas are going to use women and children as human shields and hide behind them, and not
Edwards, you're deflecting. You're going back to the same talking points. We've.
Well, you haven't let me.
I want to know how Israel's actions would look different if Israel's goal was genocide while maintaining plausible deniability. How would they act any different from how they acted?
Well, it's not genocide, as I've already explained to you, because genocide requires specific intent, and Israel targets Hamas, not the civilians.
How do you know they're not targeting both?
Well, they don't target civilians; they target Hamas.
How do you know?
Because I've seen it.
What do you mean? What do you mean? You know every single strike in Gaza and what the intention and then their.
They don't target civilians.
Wait, Edward.
Civilians become the casualties of war, but it does not mean that the country that's opposing those targets is doing it intentionally.
Edwards, you see how you're not able to answer the question. You have an assumption based on what you want to believe to be true, and I get it. I served in the IDF. I used to believe it's the most moral army in the world until reality hit me. You talk about understanding reality. You are convinced that there's no way that Israel has any intention to harm civilians, but your proof of this is simply you believe it to be true. So you can't say that you're just accepting reality for it is. You're coming from a deep bias that wants to believe that Israel is doing everything right. I understand where that belief comes from, but that doesn't mean you're grounded in reality.
Right, of course, army mistakes during war, but I'm telling you that it is a great tragedy when civilians become the casualties of war. It does not mean that the country that is imposing those casualties is doing it intentionally or committing genocide. Israel has delivered over 2.1 million tons of aid since Hamas started this war on October 7, 2023, when they carried out the worst terrorist attack in Israel's history, the worst terrorist attack in modern history, and the worst mass murder of Jews since the Holocaust. Now, I can't stress enough how sad it is when civilians become the casualties of war. Germany lost 2 million civilians during by the end of the Second World War. It happens. It's horrible. But if they don't want it to happen,
I'm gonna stop you there. I don't buy it that you actually care about casualties of war, because that's just the thing people say in order to hold on. That's the thing people say to make them seem like they're compassionate. But if you actually cared, then you would be able to find a legitimate criticism of Israel, and you'd be honest about it. Why didn't Israel allow for proper evacuations out of Gaza? Why did Israel destroy the water systems? Why did they inhibit the healthcare system's ability to operate? Why do they engage with
their border, let in every single one?
No, be honest. You don't really care about civilians, because if you did, you wouldn't be so defensive. You would acknowledge.
I didn't say I care.
Israel has done atrocious things in Gaza.
From the casualties of war. Don't start wars. Gaza had 20 years to build for peace after Israel pulled out in 2005. They chose the path of Hamas and jihad and war.
You want to
accept war and stop playing the victim.
You want to shift to this talking point. Do you know that after Hamas was elected, they reached out to Israel to negotiate a 10-year truce, where some of the leaders said we could even extend this to a 50 or even 100-year truce? And in the short time after they were elected, rocket fire significantly decreased. It's not that rocket fire started after they got elected. That's just a common misconception in Hezbollah talking point. It was prior to them getting elected.
No, yeah,
Hold on.
doesn't say.
Once they got elected, rocket fire decreased significantly because they were trying to negotiate a truce. Israel did not meet them at the negotiating table and try to meet in the middle or find some way to get a truce. Israel said, no, we're not going to negotiate with you. We put Gaza under siege. And this wasn't just a blockade to stop arms imports. We stopped 100% of exports. We stopped imports of many vital goods. We destroyed their economy. So no, this wasn't we pulled out and tried to have peace. We didn't. We pulled out. They elected, it would have been better if they elected the PA. They elected Hamas, who reached out for us to truce, and then they were met with a very serious siege that was far beyond just stopping weapons. So when you don't give people peaceful means to achieve their goals, violence generally ensues. And no, I do not support any of Hamas violence. I think violence should always be the absolute last resort. But I understand that there's certain conditions on the ground that are going to significantly increase the chance of violence. Yeah. So Israel's MO for 100 years has to be impose on Palestinians conditions that are likely to lead to violence, and then respond to that violence by imposing more of those same conditions. That's
okay. What we did. Well, I wasn't insinuating that you support Hamas. I was just wondering.
I just wanted to make it clear because that's often how people the conclusion people often read.
Because you say that, I was just wondering, like, if you say that they wanted a 10-year peace deal, then why did they spend the last 20 years building a 600-mile network of terror tunnels under the Gaza Strip? And why did they start?
Again, Israel responded to their truce offer. Israel responded to their truce offer with a siege. Hamas, Israel was trying to just keep them happy by letting workers in and funneling money from them to Qatar.
And those workers were given intel to Hamas. That's why October 7th was so awful.
Wait, so let me ask you something, because I do hear this a lot. Let's say you're a Gazan, okay? You can barely feed your family. You're lucky enough to get permission to.
Well, I would be able to feed my family if Hamas hadn't stolen billions from the world over.
You see, you can't. You're every time you just go to just a different talking point. Let's stay on this line of thought for one second, okay? You're a Gazan. You finally get permission to work in Israel. You start providing for your family. Hamas then takes you in for an interrogation and threatens to kill you or your family if you don't give intel on Israel. Would you let yourself die, or would you give intel on Israel?
Well, if I was living in Hamas society, I'd be radicalized, because if you look at their school system, they're taught that the highest. You
can't even answer the question. Why is that? I'm asking you. Maybe let's say the Gazan that worked in Israel and gave intel. Is it possible that it wasn't nefarious and they were threatened and they?
If I lived in Gaza and grown up under Hamas education, of course I'd do what they say, because I'd be a radicalized Mohammedan.
Okay, so, but you still have no problem to demonize the society and make it sound like this is all just purely nefarious. But you're recognizing if you were in their shoes, you wouldn't be all too different from them.
Of course not. I'd be radicalized and want to kill every Jew I could get my hands on. That's their society.
I mean, that's certainly some members of their society, and then there's other members that are very happy to coexist. Right. I mean, I had a friend in Gaza who used to join me for live streams all the time, and he was unfortunately killed in an airstrike. Some of the peacemakers were killed along the way, both on October 7th and since. Anyways, we're gonna there's a lot of people requesting, so we're gonna move on. Any final thoughts without going on like a talking point tangent?
I don't know if I have any final points. I mean, I just wish they wouldn't. To be honest, I wish they would have just released the hostages early on, laid down their weapons, surrendered unconditionally, and stopped the suffering of their own people. But, you know, again, as it is a radicalized jihadist society, they want to continue the barbarism. I mean, I think we only saw, was it 4 days ago, executing Gazans in the street and chanting Allahu Akbar, God is great, because they have to make sacrifices to their God. It's a horrible, horrible society.
I don't. Gaza. Okay, we're not gonna do this. We're not gonna do this dehumanization. That's not. That's what we're here to do.
No,
Edwards. I wouldn't accept that if it was done about Israeli society. We could talk about ideas. We could challenge one another, but saying it's a horrible, horrible society, that's not what we're doing here. Thanks for joining and sharing your thoughts.
All right.
With that, we are going to bring Altoids on. Altoids, welcome. We have Altoids Zev, traditional Jewish name. What's up, man?
Me? You hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. What's going on?
All good, all good. So I don't want to get into anything the previous speaker said because I don't think it's any useful to my points. But I want to get into the previous conversations with the woman that's called Rose and the guy Seth. I made some notes about it. Now, one of the things they said is that there won't be peace until there's two-state solution on the 67 borders, including the east section of Jerusalem, of the city of Jerusalem. Now, this is what they say, and I understand their point. Now, the issue that I have with that position, and I know you, Adar, have a position of the one-state solution more or less. You're developing the
Wait. That's not true.
Okay, I don't know. I said I didn't say that. I meant you are playing around with the idea in the server. We always talk about it. The people come up and talk about it.
Well, one of the solutions that I could definitely get behind is something like a federation, which is a form of one-state solution. But I would not object to a two-state solution either. For me, it's all about I'm not ideologically driven by what the solution is. For me, it's how do we ensure to protect the rights of all the people living between the river and the sea? What are the institutions we need to build to be able to protect those rights and allow people to thrive and prosper? There's different ways to do that. I'm open to these different ways of achieving that.
I understand. So they were saying, oh, we need to get the east section of the city of Jerusalem, right? Now with the 1967 borders. My only issue here really is not the fact that they want this, because we can want many things out in life. My issue is like they don't get that Jerusalem and the rest of Judea and Samaria was conquered in the 1967 war. Now, before that, some areas of Jerusalem, like what's called today Shekshara and Silwan and other parts, and parts of the old city, they had heavy Jewish populations already. Now, today, if there's Jews there, if Jews try to live there, they call them settlers. Now, of course, for example, in Shekshara, you have the tomb of Shimeon HaSadik, of Simon the Just, where Jews live around that area today, and they call them a settlement. But that was a Jewish neighborhood in 1875 and 1890. Now, of course, I'm sure we lost this in 1967, and I fully understand. We lost Shekshara, we lost Silwan, we lost parts of the old city. Okay, we lost it in the war. We lost parts of other parts of Jewish life in Judea and Samaria. And I understand we lost it in the war. And in 1967, the Jews occupied Israel, more specifically. They defeated Jordan and took Jerusalem, unified Jerusalem, and since then it's been controlled by Israel. My only issue with as you know, I support the two-state solution. I think the two-state solution could be, depending how we apply and how we define the states. I support it. Now, I don't think there's a negotiation to be done about Jerusalem at all. That is the center of the debate is Jerusalem. Why is East Jerusalem to be given to the Palestinian state? Is it because they want to have a reason to continue rejecting peace, or like what is it? Let's get to the core of that question. Do they want to is Jerusalem because it's historically theirs, it's been the capital of their state for many times, for many years? What is the reason to have East Jerusalem? If they get a full state, they get a full state except the city of Jerusalem. I don't think there's negotiation, and there's not going to be negotiation. Israel will have to be destroyed for that to happen.
Altoids, I think. Just to answer your question real quick, I mean, Jerusalem is a holy city for Muslims and Christians, and obviously Jews as well. What better capital than that? I mean, to me, it makes perfect sense why they would want Jerusalem.
I agree, and I understand that point now, and this is a point that is move around all the time. why like Muslims, not just Palestinians, Muslims in general, why do they care about Jerusalem? Now they will say, oh, it's because of the mosque, Al-Aqsa Mosque, or because of the Dome of the Rock, of etc. etc. Now, if you look into the Quran, and I don't want to really get into Islam because it's not my area of expertise, as you can imagine. They don't really have much sources about it. Nonetheless, it's like a folk tradition. Now, for Jews, it is not a folk tradition. It's not like because we feel so. Our religion just does not work without the city of Jerusalem. Judaism outside of Israel is nothing but a corpse. It's an empty vessel. There's nothing. It's when Yehuda Hanasi compiled the Mishnah in the first century, the second century, when he compiled the Mishnah, what was the Mishnah all about? It was about recompiling our tradition, so we can, whenever we are in the outside of Israel, outside of Jerusalem, of Zion, we were able to not lose our identity. For us, there's no such thing as nothing but Jerusalem. And if you take Jerusalem away today, you are going to go back to that. Jews are not going to go back to that. Not the religious Jews, not the secular Jews, not the liberal Jews. Nobody will accept that.
So,
And
Alfred,
it just
can
happens
I
to
ask you a
be.
question? Would you be okay with the solution where Jerusalem is an international city that is controlled by Jews, Christians, and Muslims all together?
The question is, why do we have to do that?
Well, I think it's an important city to all three faiths, and it's a highly contested who should control it. It seems like a beautiful compromise. Let's share it.
Well, tell me, what have the Christians, the Muslims, in Christians and Muslims, why do they think Jerusalem is sacred, or more or less like sacred? No, I don't, not exactly sacred textually, but rather, whatever it is. Christians, they don't really have a theological reason for why it's sacred. They have a more of a folk tradition of why it's sacred.
So, Altoids, this is definitely not my area of expertise, but I'm pretty certain that there is a theological reason for Christians and Muslims
Well,
finding the city to be sacred.
In Christianity, they had this question in the first century: why, like, are we Christian? Are we Jewish Christians, or are we Christians that happen to be Jewish? Now, that question was brought up in the first century. Now, they ended up deciding that they were Christians, and therefore any person in the world could be Christians, and that the Torah and all these things were not anymore important for them. Meaning, in the sense that being in Israel, being Jewish, was not what make a person a believer of God. Now, let's go back to my question. And sorry if it sounded like they have a theological reason. They do definitely have religious reasons why, but they have a core hard theology that says this place X, Y, and Z. Now,
But
why am I saying this question? Because Christians and Muslims, the only reason why they think Jerusalem in this land is sacred is because it was Jewish land 2,000 years ago, where all these things that they say they have in their own religious books, they say that happened. They happened here to our people in our land, in our history, which is written in the Torah, and we accept this as fact. And even historians will accept the Torah as a very important source of information of fact because it's facts. Now, why is this important to the point? Because if you say Jews, Christians, and Muslims should share this city, why is that? Is there not that many Christians in Jerusalem in the first place? Second place, Muslims don't have the core of the religion is not Jerusalem. It is in the Arabian Peninsula, which is okay. You can make many arguments about the people here. We're talking about Palestinians, etc. But now speaking on the topic of the so-called international control. Why do Jews, who our entire religion, culture, and history is dedicated, is centered, and is based on the city of Jerusalem, on the Mount Sinai and the Temple Mount and all these areas, why do we have to give it to other people who were inspired by our history to make their own religions and cultures? Like Palestine, I get the Palestinians, for example, many Palestinians are descendants of Jews and Samaritans.
Altoids, I don't want to stay on this topic for too long, but
Yeah.
if it's important for Christians and Muslims, it's not for you to question the importance because Judaism came first. They very well could see it. Yeah, Judaism came first, and then Christianity is just an evolution of Judaism. And I'm saying this as an agnostic, so this is not what I believe. But just because Judaism predates these other religions doesn't mean it's more correct or has more claim to land. That's just,
And that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. If you listen to carefully what my points are, I'm not talking about our theology. If you wanted me to go in what I believe God gave us the land 3,000 years ago. That's my basic core belief. But that's not what I'm arguing. What I'm arguing here is it just happens to be that Jewish people, and by Jewish I mean Bnei Israel, the children of Israel, we were here in this land. We have been in this land for thousands of years. We have history here, and it happened to be that Christianity and Islam, they both the reasons why they say they have why they have a thing here is because of our history. Things that happened to us in our history as a nation, as a group, as a people. Why do they have a right? A people who is not us. Why do they have a right above us over our own places of history, our own indigenous areas, our own national identity?
it's not.
Why do they have a right up top of us?
Altoids, it's not just our place of history. It's a place of history for Christians and Muslims as well.
How is a person from Sweden who's a Christian have any history with the Middle East in Jerusalem? They have no history. They just happen to be Christians, but they have no culture. What is the like in the Christian stories? It talks about Jesus' Last Supper.
Wait,
What was the Last Supper?
Altoids,
It was a dinner for Pesach.
There's no.
For us Jews, we read this. Like, for example, if a Jew reads the story of Jesus, we get it. It's a Pesach story, like the way he died. It's Pesach.
Swedish
For a Christian, it's just it's a nice folk tale about something that happened in the middle 2,000 years ago.
Swedish Christians are not really relevant. That's not what's contested right now. You have a city that is highly contested.
We're talking about Christians overall.
Yeah, I mean, and
Muslims overall.
but so you have Christian Palestinians who are also Bnei Israel. They're the descendants of ancient Israelites. So are many.
And I'm fine with them.
So are many Muslims. Okay, so it's not just our city. It's a city for the three major monotheistic faiths. Seems sensible to share it. Why not share when we can? Well, but you know what? I don't think.
Are they not sharing it right now?
Wait, hold on. I don't think. Well, Israel has primary control of Jerusalem. But let me ask you a question, and then we're gonna move on. Let's say we were very close to signing a peace deal, but the only thing that was left was agreeing for Jerusalem to be an international city, and that with guarantees that Jews can be safe there and go to their holy sites, but it's not run solely by Jews. It's controlled by multiple entities who share it. Would you object to peace being signed just because Jerusalem will be shared? Would you let that get in the way from us actually signing an agreement?
Yes, and I will tell you why. Because I rather only have the city of Jerusalem.
Altoids,
yeah, I will
keep it to 60 seconds just because we have a lot of people waiting. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. I would rather have only the city of Jerusalem and give the rest of the country to the Palestinians than having no city of Jerusalem and the rest of the country. Because Tel Aviv is not our heartland. It's not where we were established. It's nothing to us. It's just a city with nice buildings. I'd rather have only Jerusalem and not any other part of this country. That's why. Okay,
well, I appreciate you sharing that perspective, and that's actually a new perspective that I haven't heard yet. So thanks for sharing. And I also do want to point out, Altoids, I've known you a while. We definitely have our fair share of disagreements, but notice I didn't. Our conversation was very different from the last guest that came on because you didn't come on with just the traditional talking points that have been debunked time and time again. So I'm highlighting the difference just to show that this is really a space for a broad spectrum of different views, but there's a lot of just the propaganda talking points. We're just not going to give as much room and space to just spew here. That's not what we're doing. So with that, thank you, Altoids. Great to hear from you.
Bye-bye.
We are going to, let's see, we have Jenny coming on now. We're going to do Jenny. we are going to do Oren. I hope I remember this order. Somebody please key me to it. Hold on, let me write this down real quick. We're going to do Jenny, Oren, King. I believe you've been waiting as well. King afterwards. David, Ido, Rania, and then Jacqueline. Okay, so that is the order. I wrote it down so we can stick to it. Okay, and with that, Jenny, what's up? How's it going?
Hey, it's going all right. So this is what I need to, well, I'm just going to ask you, have you, I assume that you're familiar with the Muslim Brotherhood, correct?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, all right. And you know that Hamas is Muslim Brotherhood, correct?
They are an offshoot that were inspired by Muslim Brotherhood ideology. They're not one and the same.
No, that's not incorrect. Nope, that's incorrect. Sheikh Yassin was brought from Egypt to Gaza to create Muslim Brotherhood in Gaza.
Yeah,
All right,
that's exactly.
that's a historical fact.
That's not contradictory to what I said. Today, Hamas
Well,
is not.
it's not an offshoot. Excuse me, Adar. If you're going to allow people to speak, then you need to let them speak. Okay, and you were very, very unfair to Edward. All right, so.
Okay, Jenny, continue.
Excellent, thank you. So no, you did contradict me because it's not an offshoot. It is literally Muslim Brotherhood. Have you read the Covenant?
No, I don't think so. But I am familiar with Muslim Brotherhood ideology and their
Adar.
Yeah.
Adar. Okay. So I do not understand how you think you can have an opinion on Hamas and what their goals are and what they are all about if you haven't read the 1988 Hamas Covenant. You need to read that. You need to read their own words. You need to read what their goals are, because you're in
wait, hold on. Are you talking about their initial charter? Is that what you mean by their covenant? Their first charter? You are. 1988. That was the year they. Okay, I don't know why. I don't think it's called a covenant. It's their charter. Yes, I did read it. I read their updated charter. I even live streamed a review of the charter. Okay, so we could move beyond that point. I know exactly what their views were, and I know how they modified them over time. I'm not hearing you anymore, Jenny. Now you're not on stage anymore. What happened? But is it possible that you just tried to delegitimize my perspective while calling it the completely wrong name? Is that what just happened? Interesting. That's interesting. Okay. Unless covenant is some other name that I'm not familiar with. But you're gone for now. If you do want to come back on, Jenny, afterwards, just raise your hand again and we could continue. And I was, you could say I was in a sense unfair to Edwards because we're not giving equal platform time to propaganda. We're just not. And I don't care which side the propaganda comes from. Okay, cool. Who did we say is next? We said Oren is next. Telling me I can't comment on Hamas if I haven't read the wrong name of something. Okay. Anyways, Oren, all you, man.
Hello, Adar.
Hey, how's it going?
Hello, Adar. Hello, everybody. Fine. Yeah, I'd like to share my perspective, like everybody else. Just a very short introduction. I'm a former Israeli anti-Zionist. I would be an anti-Zionist even if there wouldn't be any Palestinian in existence, if it would only be green grass, because I'm against the idea of Jewish earthly sovereignty. But that's enough of that. The perspective I would like to share is this. When you say Israel-Palestine, it sounds complicated, but it is nothing as complicated as reality, because in reality, these entities, and now I'm going to focus on the Israeli one, are very, very, very fragmented. I actually would say that Israel is a sort of a cover term for a loose coalition of warring tribes. Some are in rapid descendants, some are in ascendance, some are going sideways. So when you say peace between the Palestinians and Israel in any form, I think this is simply impossible because Israel is so fragmented. And it is not only fragmented internally, like sometimes societies are, it is the consequence of an unorganic birth and growth. The Zionist political movement was not an organic movement of the Jewish people, like let's say the immigrants from Ireland in mass immigrating to the United States because of the famine and other reasons that drove them there. They represented a very small minority in the Jewish communities. I don't say small, I mean about 4 or 5%, something like that. The Zionist ideologues. And again, I want to make this very clear. I'm not speaking about the Zionists, the religious, the Jewish Zionists, Rabbi Saadia Gaon, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, the poets, the Jewish poets and rabbis, that there is a strong affiliation between Jewishness and Zion on a spiritual level, but this is very, very conditional on that spiritual level. It is not proprietary. Just as an example, I posted today on my profile, you can see it, how Rachel's tomb looked like when it was captured in 1967, a tiny, modest little house structure with an olive tree next to it, and what it looks like now. Nothing spiritual about it. It looks horrible, absolutely horrible. So this is a process that's been happening for the last century, actually since the beginning of Zionism, because again, this was to separate between the religious Zionists that came out of worship, which is absolutely recognized and was always recognized by the Muslim population of the land of Palestine. This was always recognized and respected and accepted. The problem started with secular, anti-Jewish, anti-diaspora Jewish ideologues that came to claim proprietary rights in Palestine. That is where the problem started. And for this reason, and okay, to make things a bit more complicated, they were powered by external powers. They were under the protection and they were serving foreign interests, and they were collaborating and still are. They still are. So this group of Ashkenazi Jews that came here with no relation to Jewishness, no relation to spirituality, no relation to anything, as secular ideologues, sometimes socialists, others, they were serving sometimes unknowingly foreign interests throughout their history. So now when you take this society now, when you've got immigrants from various places of the world, some of them know, some of them don't know, some of them are deeply connected to the West, and the West is the center of gravity of this colonial aspect of the Israeli society. On the other hand, you've got religious Jews. Some of those are becoming messianic to the point of the book of Joshua fundamentalists in that direction. Others really just want to pray and want to lead their religious life. Other Israelis under the umbrella of Israelis are Palestinians, Muslims, Christians, Druze. So the state of Israel, as I described before, is loose coalition of warring tribes and rapidly moving in different directions, which makes it even more impossible to come to any kind of Israel versus Palestine paradigm. This is a very, very serious thing. Now, if things were not complicated enough thus far, you've got the fact that there is a huge flux of the global geopolitical structure that created Sykes-Picot, maintained this secular colonial Zionist project till now, and is being now eroded, like the entire West is being eroded in not in favor, but replaced by a different global structure. This will have serious impact on what is happening in Palestine, in Israel. I think this perspective is important to remember and to consider, rather than speaking of Israel as a normal state functioning with some kind of unity and facing Palestine. And again, let's not forget that. Imro's mentioned it, and it's a very important point. One important mission of the Zionist project was to erode any Arab nationality, particularly the Palestinian, but any Arab kind of nationality, in the service of these global interests. But what they did to Palestinians is horrific. Now you've got Palestinians 48, Palestinians East Jerusalem, Palestinians Gaza, Palestinians West Bank, Palestinian diaspora, and it depends what diaspora, and they're not speaking in one voice. Gaza, of course. I don't know if I mentioned Gaza. So this requires, I think, a totally different kind of thinking. A totally different kind of thinking. I don't think that a two-state solution under these circumstances, and I don't think under any other circumstances as well, is viable. In my opinion, what Israelis and Palestinians and other people who are interested in the subject should think about is dismantling the Zionist logic carefully, without bloodshed, because the people are not the ideology, and it's not about killing Israelis and getting rid of Israelis. It's about dismantling a time bomb very, very carefully, and trying to arrive at a different political model. And I think it will be a one-state model. And by the way, I think this one state will probably defy the Sykes-Picot paradigm as well, if people are wise and able enough to do it. But this is basically how I think about the situation.
Thanks for sharing, Oren. And I would actually like to go deeper with you, but in around 15 minutes, we do need to wrap this up. We're going to move it to our private session on Discord. So I would love to find another opportunity for us to get to talk more, because I appreciate I'm intrigued by your perspective. So thanks for sharing.
Sure.
Also, I wanna put it on the record. I did fact check. So Jenny was not incorrect by calling it the 1988 covenant. That was the official name. In recent decades, it was referred to as the charter. So I'm putting it on the record that Jenny was not incorrect in referring it to that. I simply know it as the charter. So accuracy and honesty is very important. But I'm bummed she's gone. Could have had an interesting one. Anyways, with that, we are gonna, who do we say will be next? King left, David left, Ido. Okay, Ido. And I am gonna ask for each guest to try to keep it to 3 to 4 minutes, just so we can get to everybody. And with that, Ido, the floor is yours, man.
Hey, thank you there. Appreciate it. I really don't want to talk too much. I'll keep it short. I just want to say we've a couple of 2 or 3 speakers earlier. We heard a long list of talking points. I certainly don't want to develop them or counter them, because I've heard them before, long ago. They're kind of, we've heard them since a while. And it made me wonder, it made me think a little bit about what is it that, I mean, how is it possible to, after these last 2 years specifically, to come up with the same arguments of 3 or 4 or 5 or more years ago, as if nothing really, really important has happened. This really boggles my mind. And one thing is specific is, and I want to say something positive about that speaker. He expressed sorrow about the civilians killed in Gaza. And I don't want to go into, people, I would like to accept everyone's sorrow as authentic, and I don't question it. I'm glad for anyone expressing sorrow about it. What I wanted to mention is there is a peculiar thing with people defending the government of Israel, is that they express opinions or attitudes rather than opinions, or emotions in this case, that the government of Israel does not. And I've been trying to locate an example of an Israeli official in official capacity, not a speaker, not an unappointed speaker, not a citizen voice, not an influencer, but an actual official of the state that would express sorrow. And I couldn't find it. The last time, by the way, Netanyahu himself did, but that was 10 years ago. And since then, I was not able to find any. I'm not I don't have the absolute powers of absolute search. So if anyone finds that, I'm looking for such expressions. I think it's a phenomenon that the state of Israel sends people, not necessarily the speaker here, but, the influencer kind of people that voice a more softened version of the stance or attitude of the state, while the state itself keeps its mouth shut. And that is something to think about, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Edo. Appreciate hearing from you. With that, we are going to give it over to, who do we say was next? Rania. Rania, welcome to the stage. The floor is yours. By the way, this is kind of funny, but our friend Jenny, who hopefully we get the opportunity to hear from her next time, she added me to some lists, added you to their list, Marxist Misfits and Yevistgitsia, which I looked it up. It's the Jewish wing of the Soviet Communist Party or something like that. So she somehow concluded from my views that I'm a Marxist, which is interesting. But anyways, okay. Rania, how's it going?
Thank you, Ada. It's going well. I will make my comments as short as possible, if you don't mind. Just try to limit myself to 3 minutes now. I lost a bit of few seconds on the way. I appreciate the space. I appreciate the opportunity, and I thank you for that. And I do look to the situation from a different perspective. I do want to see the peace coming individually that would benefit people on an individual level before speaking on state level or public level or Palestine level, Israel level, this nationwide interest. I'm more interested into the person themselves. And if in case a mother in Gaza who wants, just speculation, right? Who wants to feed her baby and she wants to have the milk formula being presented to her and given. And this formula was supplied. I think that's an interesting perspective to look into it, right? And if there are some other people who are trying to prevent her from having this formula and having her baby fed, that is, in my opinion, is a conflict of interest, because this group who actually took the formula away from this mother doesn't want the mother to feed her baby. They want the child somehow to starve. And in this case, she has no option but to go to the public eye and say, well, I need a milk formula, which is in complete shortage in the market in Gaza, quote unquote, because we want some specifics. I'm really into specifics because we don't have this sort of individual discussions. And based on some certain events, I would actually establish my moral compass where the people who actually want the more suffering in order to gain more political influence, and where are the people who are trying to ease the suffering in order to obtain moral high ground. And between both, my interest is not about how to achieve a two-state solution or how to divide a city here or there, right? And I'm a Christian, right? Jerusalem does mean a lot of things to me. I'm an Orthodox Christian, right? But I do try to think from different perspectives that most people don't take into accountability. And Adar, whatever you think about the ruling party in Gaza, right? Hamas, whatever, if they are trying to sue for peace or not sue for peace. If you think the story that I've given you is reality, I don't think that these guys actually have any moral standard that you can actually base your argument on. And now this is an offshoot, and you can actually counter that argument. That's you're right, but just as a thought to think about it. From another perspective,
Wait, Ronnie, just so I make sure I understand your point, you're saying Hamas doesn't have any moral high ground. Was that the?
if they do take the formulas of the babies, if they do such a thing, do you think that there is some moral standard that we can actually base our communications with them on that?
Well,
Or even think
I don't.
yes,
You're talking about Hamas.
yes,
Oh,
to
well,
some
I mean,
extent,
I think
or any other group,
I think Hamas.
any other that does the same.
I think they're a horrible entity, and I wish they ceased to exist. But I don't think, like many other Israelis, that they operate from a place of pure evil and that they're completely uncompromising and are not open to any reform. So I don't agree with that, but I definitely don't like them and don't think that they are good for Palestinians or good for Israelis. No, I wish we had a more moderate government to negotiate with, like the PA, for example. But yeah, so that's in short my position on them.
So I'm glad that you made that clear, because I misunderstood you for many things. Honestly, when you said that they sued for peace and then they sued for truce and then said some things. No. I thought to some extent that
I think it's well, that's just true. I mean, they did attempt a truce, that which we rejected. That's just the reality.
Yes, but you cannot actually build a sort of trust bridge with people who actually do some horrible things, right?
No,
Or
so I'm not convinced. I think if we look at the history of different resistance organizations, many of them, they come with maximalist, uncompromising demands, and then often through negotiation, they make massive concessions. I have yet to be convinced that Hamas is completely different than pretty much all other organizations before them, and they're completely unchangeable. And in fact, we saw from their 1988 charter to their 2017 charter some pretty significant changes. At the end of the day, Hamas are made up of people. People change, and people die, and then are replaced by new people. So, if Hamas is unchangeable, then they would be the first organization in the history of the world that is unchangeable. So I'm just not convinced by that argument. Now, again, I don't.
But we agree that they steal some milk formulas.
Yeah, and they execute
Let's
their
go
own
back.
people in cold
They do that.
blood. Yeah, they shoot. Yeah, for sure. They're horrible. This is not a defense for Hamas. It's just trying to be brutally honest that I think even extremist organizations are reformable for sure. And we just need all we need to again. We have so much historical precedent for extremists moderating over time. I mean, I would say al-Shara in Syria, and it's not that everything is going great there, but I mean, for ex-Al-Qaeda to now want to negotiate with the U.S. and Israel to normalize ties, I mean, just another example of a terrorist turned statesman. In fact, many of the prime ministers of Israel engaged in terrorism and atrocities, and then changed their way and tried to be statesmen. History is filled with such examples. So I think we just need to.
Yeah, but I'm Christian. I know how we think. I mean, part of my faith is believing in the Torah, and we do have a different thinking system. Then I don't see how you actually equivalent people who actually have some sense of morality to the point I started with this individual. I don't want to establish any sort of stipulation here, but I started with an individual example just to be sure where you stand on this issue. And there is another point and last point, and I would land my plane here. Here in the West, I live in Germany, right? And maybe you do notice that there are some real anti-Semitic rise in the West. And in Germany alone, we have documented several incidents against Jewish scholars. They're being traced, they're being confronted in lectures. Some of them were denied access to their own lectures and so forth and so vital. This sort of anti-Semitic, I would describe it the way as the German chancellor put it, as an Antisemitismuswelle, a wave of anti-Semitism coming to Europe that culminated in the attack on the synagogue in the UK. How do you see? I know now I'm speaking officially. How do you see your role, the role that is being played by the Israelis diaspora, the Israelis, and the Jewish community in general? They're doing a wonderful job. But for you, how can you contribute to counter this wave? How can you make the Jewish communities in Berlin safe, in Hamburg safe, and they don't have to care for their children? Because part of what I actually follow in my studies, that the sort of minorities, because Jewish communities in Germany are a minority, when they're actually being pushed to the corner, it's some sort of isolation, and the German government is mostly concerned about the integration and assimilation. How can you assist on such a thing? Thank you so much, and I land my plane here.
Thanks, Rania. Were you asking me specifically as an individual what I think I could do to combat anti-Semitism?
As an individual, as a journalist, as a writer, as a man of thought. Yeah.
I mean, there's a very long answer, which we don't have time for, so I'm going to keep it concise. But if people are interested, feel free to ask me about it on a future live stream or space, and I'm happy to go deeper into it. I think that as an Israeli citizen, focusing on getting Israel to transform and stop the human rights abuses is one of the single best ways to combat anti-Semitism. When people around the world see atrocities being carried out by the Jewish state in the name of protecting Jews, and those atrocities are seemingly supported by the majority of the world's Jewish population, there's no way that doesn't contribute to anti-Semitism. And I know people get very triggered by this. They're like, oh, you're victim blaming, you're blaming the victim. No, that's not what I'm doing. I'm acknowledging reality. Let me just give an example for those who struggle with this concept. Imagine if every Muslim you interacted with was supportive of 9/11 or some other Islamic terrorism. Would that not increase Islamophobia? Obviously it would. So Israel is not the cause of anti-Semitism. I consider anti-Semitism to be a fire that's burned for thousands of years. And there's certain actions that either pour fuel on the fire or pour water on the fire. Israel's actions and blind support for Israel's actions is certainly fuel to the fire that is anti-Semitism. So by me doing my small part to change Israel is, in my opinion, the best thing I could do to combat anti-Semitism. I also think in addition to that, we should do more reaching across the aisle. I say this about most hateful people, racists, Islamophobes, anti-Semites. Often it comes from a place of fear and misunderstanding or ignorance. It's generally not nefarious. So I also don't think we should assume the worst about people's intentions and actually engage in dialogue with people who we think are anti-Semitic. I don't think canceling them changes their views. I think we should engage with them and build ties with them. So that's just some thoughts on what I think we could do. And happy to go deeper on this on a future stream. With that, we're going to bring Jacqueline on. Then we're going to move it over to Discord. I'll explain more about the Discord. For those who didn't have the opportunity to share today, we do this every Tuesday at this time. So I'd love to have you back next week. And those who didn't get a time to speak, we will prioritize next week. But you're also welcome to join Discord for the continuation of this conversation. Rania, thanks for sharing. And with that, we're going to bring Jacqueline on. Jacqueline, how's it going? Jacqueline?
Hi, thanks. It took a while for me to get up. You say you Israeli, am I right?
Yeah.
Okay. Then I can only ask you, have you seen what had happened on October the 7th to the Jewish people?
Okay.
Just leave Palestinian out of it. I'm asking you specifically on the brutality that happened on October the 7th.
Yeah, I have seen it. It's horrific.
Okay. So my question to you is, and I'm going back to what your first speaker had said about Christians and Muslims have some claim on Israel, which I fully agree with him, as I'm a Christian myself, that we do not have a place and should never have a place in Israel. Just because there's a mosque or a Christian church being built 1,000 years in that city, we shouldn't have taken something that belongs to the Jews. So my other logic theory to you is every Jew that was murdered on October the 7th is equivalent to killing 3 million people in one country. So if you are saying that all other countries should make some peace with the Jews, which would be impossible given what the brutality that we have seen happened. You are talking about 15 million Jews, whether it's around the world or 10 in Israel.
Jacqueline, real quick, just so I can follow your line of thinking, every Jew that was killed is equivalent to 3 million non-Jews. Can you please explain that?
Let me explain it, because I was going to get there. Christians makes up 2.4 billion. Muslims, presumably 1.8 billion. Jews only make up 15 million. So if you were to kill one Jew is equivalent to how many Christians there are in the world. So you are going to genocide all Jews if you were to kill every Jew equivalent to a Christian or a Muslim. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, so you're talking about.
So if you want to bring, you are saying,
Jacqueline, so you're saying the proportion of the population, but I don't agree with the logic that killing one Jew is equivalent to killing 3 million other people. I mean, that's a wild statement.
Well, let me put it like this. if you were to kill a Jew, like on October the 7th, you are shrinking the numbers of Jews drastically. So if you are killing one Jew, as I said, is equivalent to wiping out 3 million in one day, then you will wipe out a whole population. Does that make sense?
No, because the proportion is not the only thing.
Okay, now let me take it then further.
The proportion is.
If you were to take 15 million Jews.
I want to explain why. The proportion is not the only thing that matters. The amount of rights that are violated, the amount of pain and suffering that's caused by 3 million being murdered is significantly higher than one person being murdered, no matter how.
So what do you think happening now with the Christians in Africa? While they are attending churches, they are being beheaded by Islamists.
What's
Is that not equivalent to killing one Jew at least?
I am not following your logic. A life is a life. We should protect people's inalienable right to life wherever it's violated.
So why don't you protect the life of the Jews? Because if you're not going to protect the life of the Jews, you won't have Israel.
Jacqueline.
You won't have Israel to claim, because what will happen is, even with the 2 million, even with the 2 million Arabs that are still.
I'm not going to let you filibuster if you want to.
Let me finish up.
No.
Let me finish up. Then you can have your mic.
Jacqueline, hold on. You're taking up precious time, and you're not making coherent points. I'm sorry. That's just the reality. You said, then why don't I want to protect Jews? How did you reach that conclusion? My entire perspective is one of universal humanism.
Because you were to take up.
Let me finish, which means we need to protect the rights of all people. It's a perspective I've shared here on this stage tonight on multiple occasions. So if you're somehow to reach the conclusion, first, the very odd conclusion that one Jewish life is like 3 million non-Jews, that's wild. And then second, the accusation that I somehow don't care about my own family, preposterous. Seriously. Floor is yours.
Well, if you were to say, okay, with already 10 million in Israel, you would allow 2 million more, let's say for argument's sake, the Palestinians move into Israel. Do you think the numbers would stay at 2 million Palestinians? No.
Wait. What do you mean for argument's sake? What perspective? What did I share that?
Because what you are advocating for is to allow people from other religion to infiltrate Israel and to sing Kumbaya. It's not going to stick with only 2 or 3 or 4 million people. It's going to escalate to 50 million, outweighing the Israelis in their own land.
Okay, we're done with Jacqueline. Jacqueline, I'm sorry, that was just a very poor performance. Nothing you said made sense. Every accusation about me was simply untrue. In fact, my most right-wing position is that I think people have the right to determine an immigration policy. I don't agree with open borders and mass immigration. No. So what the hell are you talking about, my lady? Anyways, that's just. Try better next time. I'm sorry. I just precious time we have here. Nothing coherent. And I'm not saying that you're not invited back. You are, but just try to, not make accusations and come with something that people can actually understand. Also, I'm going to put this out there because the proportion was very important to you. What proportion of the Palestinian population in Gaza has been killed compared to the Jewish population in Israel? We're talking about orders of magnitude difference, the worlds apart. So is your position that Israel is significantly worse than Hamas because they killed a significantly higher proportion of the civilian population? I get the sense you don't believe that. Anyways, guys, we're going on 2 hours now. We're going to wrap this up. We're going to move this over to Discord. The conversation will continue on Discord. Anybody can join. You could listen in. You could speak. If you didn't get to share now and you want to share on Discord, you're welcome to. If Discord's not your thing, that's understandable. We're going to do another space next Tuesday, same time, 7:30 p.m. Jerusalem time. And I do see we have waiting here Eva, the real Slim Ronik, and Mitch Mango. Sorry, we don't have time, but we'll get to you next week or join Discord. Link to the Discord is in my bio. You'll see a link. Click there on the left-hand side. It says the stage, and click the stage and you'll be connected. And with that, sending you all much love. Until next time, friends. Okay. So let's just first of all, this one at a time works much better. It was much more civil, but I mean, geez Louise, some people, how do you even deal with someone like that Laskus? That was wild. Absolutely wild. Natan, we're going to bring you on. But that's why these spaces are important, because you could tell people have really existed comfortably in their echo chamber on Twitter, and they come out with all this confidence that they're actually saying something that makes sense. So it's good. It's good that there's this challenge. Now we're just going to bring everybody on. Whoever wants to raise your hand, we'll bring you on. That's, Discord now. This is still being streamed to YouTube though, so keep that in mind, friends.
Okie dokie. Hello.
Not done. How's it going, man?
Hello. Oh, pretty good. That was exciting. Very interesting to see a few people struggle. The covenant, the 1988 covenant.
Yeah, and that was partially my mistake, because I didn't know it was referred to that way, but yeah, that was also, I knew exactly where the conversation was going. Islam. We've heard it,
Yeah. Well, and it's a legitimate complaint against Hamas. It's just also not the end of the conversation. And I think a lot of people on both sides forget that that to get past the fact that their grievances are real and get towards the conclusion of the mediation process, you know what I mean? And of the of the conflict or resolution process.
Right.
And yeah. So I do think I did like the sort of mediated aspect and moderated aspect, like a more moderated touch on these conversations. And I do like that it's that it's having these sort of public discussions too. I think that's a great idea.
Awesome. Thanks for the reinforcement. And here's the honest truth. I want it to be as balanced as possible, but clearly I have views on things, and I can't. There's just some things that I won't let slide. So I think while it was definitely better than the last ones, there are going to be some Zionists, supporters of Israel, that still feel like it's not a space they want to engage in. I don't know how to fix that, because I can't just sit there and let, the one guy that was just coming with, just whipped out the Hasbara playbook and everything in the book, we just can't let that go unanswered. Well, I have a moral obligation, I feel, to respond.
I think Altoids is perhaps a good example of someone to encourage, more representation on the platform, because he is a religious Zionist in that sense, and relatively right wing. Maybe not by Israel standards, but by sort of global standards, So and he's reasonable. He's a very reasonable guy. And me, I'm relatively left wing globally and far left Israel-wise, and I enjoy interacting with him when there's something to actually discuss, for sure. So I would sort of point to him as an example of somebody who's willing to engage with, yes, he still brings the Hasbara talking points, but he's willing to engage with them holistically and engage with the answers that you inevitably get when you present these arguments in these spaces, because there are answers to these arguments. So I encourage people to ask questions, but not be discouraged by the fact that there will be answers.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think Altoids does bring up a perspective that's certainly something that we we can accept, and it's not the toxic, demonizing worldview, but it's certainly still a religious Zionist perspective. So yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, I'll let other people chat though.
Cool. Thanks for sharing, Natan.
Hey, did you do you said you went to the olive picking thing like a couple days ago?
Yeah, I went twice the past week.
What do you do there? Just like hang out or?
I mean, you help them pick olives, you know. I've actually never picked olives before. It's kind of cool. You get to, you either pick them from like the ground but there's a bunch high up. So those who want can climb the trees to pick them. And it just their presence there, even if we weren't picking, we could literally just go and sit around. That actually helps a lot as well, because settlers are much less likely to turn up if there's.
Did they show up?
Did you see any of the settlers?
No. In the 2 times I went, I didn't. No. The only
Have you
time
seen them
I
before?
confronted settlers was a spontaneous protective presence when I was at this Palestinian-Israeli camping trip, and there just happened to be some settlers that went on one of the organizer Alice's property that we confronted, but that wasn't an organized protective presence.
But like, have you ever talked to them? Like, what is the reason they give? Like, why they're attacking Palestinians, just random like Palestinians? Is there like a specific like justification they give?
Yeah, I think they want to make. I think they want to make life on the land as hard as possible to incentivize them to leave. I think that's the primary.
Will they admit that, or like, what's their like excuse?
Yeah.
Justify
Yes,
it?
I think some will. That will be their publicly stated reason. Others might say this is revenge for what they've done to us. Right now, it's taking revenge on civilians because of the actions of someone else, right, who very likely has been killed or in jail. But I think that's probably.
Yeah, the last case you were doing, half the people came on saying they want more revenge, more blood. It's really disappointing.
You're saying the people on the space just now.
Yeah. There was
How do they
there was
justify
a Iraqi lady saying that, haven't you? They basically say they don't want any ceasefire. They want more revenge, more deaths. I mean,
But how do the radical settlers who are attacking like justify like wanting to kick them off the land? Is there like?
How do settlers justify it?
Yeah.
Again, I think when you're radicalized, this is our land. They are in the way of us having full sovereignty. They pose a threat to me and my family. So if we can engage in some form of harassment and it increases the chance that they leave, it seems like a good use of time. I think that's the rationale. But it's also possible a lot of it isn't thought through like that. That a lot of it is just reactionary. It's like it's like how. So a lot of Palestinians throw stones, right? It's not like there's this rational thing. It's like, okay, we're going to resist occupation and this will increase the chance. It's not, it's just you're a kid, you're bored. Okay, let's go fight the other side. In fact, like why when I, growing up in the suburbs of New Jersey, a relatively privileged life, why was I playing ding dong ditch and egging houses? Young men are stupid. So
they have a 15-year-old kid American, I guess, supposedly.
Like, people who are like attacking like Palestinians, do they have jobs or like regular social lives, or they just sort of like, is that like their full time, just being a scoundrel full time?
I'm not sure. A lot of them are too young to have full-time jobs. Some of them are maybe working, doing some part-time stuff. But yeah, so I think
some of these settlers, the ones that create trouble, the Israeli settlers, are they also juveniles too?
Well, we're seeing a lot of the attacks are coming from children these days. Not all. There are adults doing it, but some. Yeah, we're seeing. Maybe even the majority are coming from teens.
I don't think most settlers engage in this sort of stuff, though. Isn't that true?
Oh yeah, for sure. Most don't. If most did, it would look very, very different. Real quick, Misha. Wait, why am I getting echo? Misha Poe here on YouTube. I see you asked the question. Are you still viewing? Because if so, I'm happy to get to it. So just let me know that you're still here and I'll respond. No, so the majority of settlers are not engaging in violence. They're just living their lives for the most part. Yeah, they would still prefer Palestinians not be there. Like, why would you want to share the land with an enemy population, right? It's not irrational. It's radical, but it's not irrational to reach that conclusion. If you've been raised a certain way and if you have a certain level of fear or disdain for a population. So most, are not actively engaging in violence. They're just living their lives and they're turning a blind eye to violence and perhaps even support it to some extent.
Is it true they get any subsidies for living in the legal settlements, like this well-established ones, and you get subsidies for living there?
Yeah, there's some economic incentive to move to the West Bank. Is it subsidies? I'm not sure. I don't want to. Let me look into it. But there's definitely economic incentive. But the economic incentive might just be as simple as like cheaper housing. I don't know if it's to the level of.
That's what I mean, like cheaper house.
That's for sure. Yeah. That's for sure.
I thought not subsidies, but like they can buy like a house cheaper rather than an apartment.
I read a story like a few months ago.
Without a doubt.
Attacking like an IDF base. I read a story like a few months ago about some of the settlers attacking an IDF base. Is that like common too, or is that?
This is a very new occurrence. That's an escalation of what we've seen in the past. And it might just be what's needed to cause the IDF to crack down on the extremists, because it's easy for the IDF to turn a blind eye when Palestinians are attacked, but attacking the IDF is very serious. So it's going to be interesting to see the responses to that.
Mm-hmm. What is like the mainstream Israeli opinion of the radical settlers? Not even just like a person like living in like Tel Aviv or Haifa or like sort of coastal Israel, I guess. What would their opinion of like the radical settlers be?
I mean, the Israeli right are generally supportive of them. They think they're playing an important role to, hold more land and expand the borders of the state. Center left see them as probably a hindrance. I think that's generally how it goes, but it's going to differ from person to person. I want to give it over to Azov and then Dubs. Evman, feel free to stick around, but I want to give other people some speaking time.
Sorry, Adar, could you give me the ability to stream here, if possible? Or just screen share?
How do you do that? Do you not have that automatically?
No, I don't. If I look there, I can stream a specific app, but I can't share my entire screen.
Okay.
You might have to like edit the role permissions or like go into stage and then edit the channel settings on your side. Have an admin do it.
Member.
Right click the channel and then like click settings and then
let's see.
There should be like role permissions. You have to select the role and then like select permission to stream or something like that.
All right, I just gave you admin role. See if that works.
Don't do that.
No, not admin of the whole server. It's just a role we called admin. Don't worry.
Why?
It's for.
Okay,
I mean, that's because I don't want to just create a new role now, and I don't think you're gonna do anything nefarious. So, you're welcome to share your screen.
Do I need to refresh or?
Yeah, you might need to leave and come
channel.
back. Yeah. See if that works.
Permissions. What role is it that we normally have? Server manager, admin. Okay, hang on. Just everyone. Quest to speak, mention, create events, message history, voice message, voice chat permissions. Video mute members, no. Move members. View channel manage permissions. Oh no.
No, you don't see.
I don't see it.
I
don't see it
do
either.
you want to send me what you want to share, and I'll just share it for you?
It's like I'm working on something on my end, and I would like help from you, basically. If you could like help inform me on stuff that's happening.
Is it death toll analysis stuff?
It's a specific video. I'm trying to create like a composite panoramic around the video to determine the position that the video was shot from.
Okay. Well, so let's find a time offline. I'm happy to. We'll do a one-on-one call, or we could do it here for the community if people want to chime in. But yeah, we don't need to do that now. Just DM me and we'll
just
find.
Take the roll off.
And we'll find a time.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
I did.
Take the roll off.
I took the roll off. All good.
Okay.
Anything else you want to ask or share?
I don't think like it'll fit in the time allotted here.
Okay, sounds good. Appreciate you being considerate. Dubs, we'll give it over to you.
Hey, it was good talking to you last time, and can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear. Yeah.
So I had a question about the West Bank. Last time I brought it up, I didn't really ask the question, but are there resources on how often the attacks happen? I know Israel probably doesn't take, any kind of notes on the, amount of attacks. Are there other resources you're aware of that, provide some? Because people say it happens every day, and I'm just curious exactly, like, is it the same places every day? Is it just scattered? Like, what kind of, what's actually happening on the ground?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So first, I would say that Israel probably does have some record of it that's just not released publicly, because they do try to keep track of what's going on. In terms of who would create a publicly available account of this, I would need to look into it. Perhaps B'Tselem, because they normally do stuff like that. So it's worth looking at B'Tselem's website and seeing if they have anything. It's also maybe worth asking somebody like Andre X, who's there almost every day. But I'm happy to look into it for you and get back to you.
Yeah, I was just curious if you knew anything offhand.
Yeah.
And I'm curious on your opinion, because I'm also atheist. I'm a Lebanese American who came from a Christian family and kind of, did a deep dive into evolution and everything. And, human migration starting in like the 90s with like air travel being affordable. I think that in the future, populations are going to change so drastically, so quickly. I don't know if you're the type of person that believes that, countries should keep some kind of ethnic identity or cultural identity, or because I see things just kind of morphing over time. And there are a lot of, ethno nations out there, like even like Greece and Japan, that I don't see that maintaining without force. And I just see in the future just kind of all countries becoming, more of a mix. I don't know if you have a vision of what the future looks like, but that's how I see it.
The future for like the land in general?
I mean, mostly for like Israel too, because like there's just no way that they can maintain, even if there's a two-state, a federation. I just see like intermarriage, all this stuff kind of changing over time. Have you thought about that, or is that just, am I thinking way too far in the future?
I mean, look, Israel faces demographic concern from two directions, right? The two fastest growing populations in Israel are Palestinian citizens of Israel, and that's the second fastest growing population. The first is the ultra-Orthodox, who are often not contributing to the state and are often non-Zionist or anti-Zionist. But I think that the fear of demographic reversal is very innate, and it's something I think we need to be sensitive to. So this is a disagreement I have with many on the left, that they think that concern over demographics is just bigoted and hateful and it shouldn't be considered, but people just have a very human aversion to that. It's like no one wants to be replaced by a group that is different from them, especially being replaced by a group that they might fear, So I think it's a very natural concern that Israelis have, but I don't think it's actually that big of a problem. I think that rate of return should be done in a very sensible way. So there's no way to absorb millions of people a year. Israel could very much have a policy where there's a cap of 30,000 Jews, 30,000 Palestinians that immigrate to the land every year. That's not going to create a demographic concern. And if over the next century, Palestinians just become the majority through having more children, which again, that's currently not the case because ultra-Orthodox are having more, but let's say that is the case, 100 years, the world is going to be, I don't even know if we'll be two separate people in 100 years. I don't even know if there will be organized religion in 100 years, So I think there's a very reasonable way to implement right of return. And I don't think if you do that, there's some grave demographic risk that's going to create, societal tension and mass instability.
Yeah, I get that. Coming from America, I just see like our country just being, a melting pot for everybody. I think that's like the best way for countries to survive. There are like obviously the right wingers who want to keep like a Christian nationalist identity. I don't know. I think the U.S. is a good, a good way to, have a country grow. But yeah, I'm just wondering your opinions. So that was it. Thank you.
Yeah.
I had a quick question
Thanks
about
for
Israel
sharing.
in general, about the war.
Sure.
Is it generally that Israel doesn't want a ceasefire right now because they don't want the Independent Stabilization Force to come in and ease the tensions between Hamas and the IDF?
Yeah, I think generally speaking, Israel, both the government and most of the people don't want a situation where Hamas is in power. And there's an idea many still hold that, there's a way to remove them from power. And I'm sure there is a way. It's just not easy. That's why a lot of Israelis have given up.
It's 2 years.
No, right, exactly.
The only way is you have to put in like some kind of like Arab military in there and govern the area until Hamas eventually leaves. Because the Israel government has tried for the last 2 years.
Yeah. So, but I think that's where the motivation comes from on the Israeli side. Not just because they want to see blood for the sake of seeing blood. A lot of the feeling of revenge, I think, has gone away the past 2 years. But I know there's a lot of pressure on Israel to.
I don't know, man. I'm seeing a lot of people on X, especially. They say, "Oh, they want more blood, more revenge." They still talk about October 7th like it's like 2 million people have died.
Yeah. But also X is a platform for people who want to share their voice. So it's not. I don't know if X is the best representation of the society as a whole. Right. If Israelis could press a button and Palestinians would just be gone, they would. Palestinians would press that same button. I think there's no denying that reality. But that doesn't mean that's feasible, tangible. There's a cost to trying to destroy the other population. So I think
that's true.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Most of the hate is actually coming from the English-speaking diaspora. Don't really live in Israel. Very true.
Yeah. Look, there's no shortage of radicals here, but we don't want to send our soldiers to die, right? A lot of Israelis, it's not just about getting the hostages back. We don't want to send our soldiers to die. We don't want the continued international isolation that comes with, what we do in Gaza. So yeah. Now I think I think Netanyahu probably has some interest in continuing this. I know there's a lot of pressure from Trump for it to end. So we'll see what happens. I don't have high confidence that it's over. As much as I wish I did have high confidence, but I don't, unfortunately.
No, Trump is trying to keep it on because his goal is obviously redevelopment, construction, and basically continuing, the empire between the Saudis and the Americans. And he really wants that, but Israel has their own plan. That's what I'm thinking.
Do you think getting rid of Netanyahu would help, or?
Potentially. It's it depends who replaces him, right? And B, it also depends on the US. So I initially, when I started doing, any form of activism and peace work, my major focus was creating a movement of Israelis and Palestinians and just kind of contributing to creating this revolution from within. But I think our populations are just too extreme, and I don't have confidence that there is a way to create a grassroots movement from within that will drastically change the status quo. But when I look at the trajectory of public opinion around the world and how they feel about Israel, the trajectory there is positive. Positive meaning the world's turning against Israel. And the reason why I say this is positive is because I think one of the surest ways for real change is the US to put major pressure on Israel to make concessions needed to solve the conflict and human rights abuses and all that stuff. So that seems to be the surest way to create change, for the US to, for there just to be more international isolation, to have Western populations not to vote in politicians who are blindly supportive of Israel. And I know this is terrifying for Israelis to hear. They like, this is a scary thought, but this to me is not the only, but the surest way to solve the conflict.
Do you think there was like a chance to like have a deal to solve the conflict in the like the 90s, early 2000s, just kind of passed by? It's not going to come back again easily.
Well, clearly it's not coming again so easily, right? Unfortunately, but it doesn't mean the option for peace is not off the table. And most Israelis and Palestinians think that there's no path forward, right? One of the reasons why it's hard to build a grassroots movement here, and why there is a lack, increased radicalization, really comes from a lack of hope. When you have been fighting an enemy for so long, and you feel like your side has tried in good faith to solve it, and the other side is uncompromising, which, by the way, this is the perspective of both sides about one another. So when that happens long enough, you lose hope. And when you lose hope, okay, so what's left? Extremism, support for violence. So that's what we're seeing. But there's definitely a peace opportunity, potentially on the table. We just need to create it and move towards it. Anybody that says peace is impossible is just not really thinking about it deeply enough. There's no reason to think that two groups of humans, no matter how much grievance they have, can't figure it out. It's that suggesting that is counter to what we know about the world and humanity, so. Now, what I will say just about who's elected next. So Bennett seems to be the most likely next prime minister, if not Netanyahu. And he, in many ways, is to the right of Netanyahu. So I don't know if he will be, he does have some, call them revolutionary ideas. He wants to create a constitution, and he does have, he's more of a revolutionary thinker than Netanyahu, who's really just been one to play it safe and maintain the status quo. But he's not some revolutionary peacemaker. He doesn't have a vision for a just solution between the river and the sea. So I don't have high hopes. Then you have people like Lapid and Gantz, which the way they speak is very similar to Netanyahu, right? There's this claim that the Netanyahu opposition is no better than him. And that might be true, but it's also possible that they're taking a much more hardline stance because they want to be relevant in the Israeli politics. And you can't be a lefty, you can't be soft on Palestinians. You need to speak a certain way. I could see a situation where Gantz or Lapid are elected, and then they shift their approach, shift the way they speak, but they need to keep a certain facade to be relevant in politics. I think that's possible, though I don't.
Go on.
Yeah, that's.
Well, yeah, go on.
Is Yair Lapid the minister that's more interested in some kind of peace plan with the Palestinians?
Yeah, he's shown a greater level of interest, for sure. But I think he's also talking about. I think Yair Golan's probably the best of all options, but he also is quite hawkish. But I think he's hawkish just to stay relevant, you know. But Yair Golan doesn't have a chance to be a prime minister, not in the near future, or at least it doesn't seem to be. So I don't know if he's relevant, but yeah, I think he would probably be the best option, and I think he is the clearest example of someone who's taking a hawkish stance, not because he believes it, but because it's the only way to be relevant. Like I'm less certain about Gantz and Lapid in that matter than I am Golan.
Yeah, a lot of Israelis say that Gantz is the most popular.
I heard some people say that any government that doesn't rely on like Ben Gvir and Smotrich would just by definition be better.
Yeah, it would be. The opposition does not plan on having them in coalition, so there is, and currently polling shows the opposition that does have more, will get more mandates than the existing coalition, than the Netanyahu bloc. Now, what's interesting is, you know, if the strategy is convince the world that what Israel is doing is not okay, one can make the case that we should support Ben Gvir because he does some of the worst PR for Israel, so he could support the goal of shifting public opinion against Israel. And then you can make the case against the moderate who might get the world to turn a blind eye and let Israel maintain the status quo. So there's an interesting perspective there, which I'm not endorsing that, but I could understand that perspective. I think what we need for peace is a combination of real pressure from the outside and a moderate enough leader that will do what's needed. Because pressure is not certain to work. Pressure could just turn Israel into a North Korea-like pariah state, right? You could see, let's say someone like Smotrich was in power or Ben Gvir was in power. Would they cave to U.S. pressure, or would they say, no, we don't need you as a friend or an ally, fuck off? And then I think that's a way more dangerous situation than we're currently in, because that's an Israel that has their back against the wall, an Israel that the U.S. has no leverage over. So I think there's pressure may lead to that. So we need pressure. We need a government that will respond positively to that pressure. And we also need our goals to be achievable, right? So all this talk about ridding the land of Jews or dismantling of the state, if you want to fail in your activism, set unachievable goals, right? And it's unfortunate how much of the pro-Palestine movement is focused on specifically those goals and not something way more achievable, which could be equality under the law or sovereignty on some part of the land. Hyper focus on one of those two solutions and you're much more likely to get it. I'm gonna wrap it up in a few minutes, but y'all can hop over in the chill room and continue. We'll end the stream and it'll just be a Discord thing. But if anybody has final thoughts or a final question, happy to respond. If not, we'll move it over to the chill room. Evan, I know you have a lot of questions, so now's your time, brother.
Okay, like, have you ever met Ben Gvir and like Smotrich voters? What do they say? Like, is the reason?
Oh yeah, of course. Most of my family are far-right settlers. My uncle and aunt live in the same town as Smotrich. They're friends with him. They vote for him. They believe and I think they would probably have disagreement with some of their rhetoric, but I mean, he's the strong leader that represents their views and wants to annex the land and have the land remain whole and be uncompromising. That's what they represent. So now when you look at
Hebron really divided like that? Like, is Hebron really like that? Like where there's streets where certain population members can't walk in?
Oh yeah, yeah. Hebron, you have like the Jewish area, and then you have the Palestinian area, and I don't know the numbers now. As of probably closer to 10 years ago, so it's probably grown significantly. There were 150 Jews there, and maybe 40,000 Palestinians is the number. But those 150 Jews there require now multiple checkpoints just to leave Hebron, strong security everywhere. Yeah, and it's Hebron split into the Jewish section and the Palestinian section. Yeah.
So 150 people get that much protection and cameras. Wow.
Yeah, let's see. I wonder what the number is now, but what is
maybe more. I'm sure more people have settled now by now.
Yeah, and just having children and stuff. But let's see what the exact numbers are. Hebron has a Palestinian majority with roughly 120,000 Palestinians in the H1 sector and 30,000 in the Israeli-controlled H2 sector, while the Jewish population in Hebron is around 1,100. Okay, so about 10x what I said. I don't know if my number.
That makes more sense. Yeah, like 1,200 maybe.
Well, but I understated Palestinians as well, right? So I said 30,000. So it's only 30,000 in the Israel-controlled area, and then another 120,000 Palestinians. But the security apparatus that currently exists affects all of the freedom of movement of all of them. Yuri, I saw you raise your hand. You want to chime in real quick before we move it to the chill room?
Yeah, sure. I've seen that you are quite critical against the new far right or right wing from British Isles, but then you're not as critical against people who claim conspiracy theories about October 7 and stuff like that. So I was just wondering why there's a difference in how mad you get about one thing and not the other. Because I get more mad about complete historical misconceptions than like extreme bias.
So I missed part of what you said. You said I'm more concerned with the far right. Did you say in the British Isles?
Yeah, I mean the British Isles that you are. I see that there's a lot of. You don't always come to an agreement with them, right? They're quite right wing in how they present the ideas and population groups, and they have some quite primitive conceptions about the population groups specifically.
Wait, are you talking about? Are you talking about like British Jews who joined the space today and were demonizing? Like I think that guy was Irish. Like, is that what you're referring to specifically?
Yeah, the British that because he's from Ireland, I just call it British Isles.
Okay, now I understand.
But that area of that area of the world, they don't like it when you call it British Isles, but I don't know what else to call it.
Yeah. Well, I think normally I'm a little bit, I push back more on people demonizing people rather than demonizing states and institutions. So that's just generally how I approach it. So for example, demonizing the Jewish people, I think is far, far worse than demonizing the IDF or demonizing Hamas, right? So I would push back more on that. And the rule I set for the space is that we're going to let views be shared freely. But if somebody's coming with just kind of traditional propaganda talking points, that I'll push back a little bit harder on it. And that generally I'll push back on demonizing rhetoric. In terms of conspiracy theorists, I disagree with them on a lot of things. And I've put out a video analysis on why I don't think October 7th was an inside job. But I understand how people reach that conclusion. Like, the world is very complicated. People don't understand how complex organizations function. And conspiracies are often a very simplistic way of understanding things. A, they're not demonizing people. B, I understand how they reach that conclusion. So I would just challenge their views and try to convince them otherwise.
So you don't like demonizing
the guy you're talking about, Edward, or I think he's one of Zico's friends. So they're on the far right extreme side of the Israel propaganda.
So you don't have like any tolerance for people demonizing like ethnic groups or whatever over like political movements or like professions or whatever.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, my philosophy, or one of my philosophies that guide me in this work, is humanize people, demonize institutions if they deserve to be demonized. Because if you change the institutions, you change the people. It's very hard to mass change the people simply by telling them they're wrong. Right, like any form of demonization towards Israelis or Palestinians doesn't change them for the better. If anything, it'll just further radicalize them because they're constantly feeling attacked. But if you change the institutions, if you change the education system, the media, the way the IDF operates, you drastically change the reality on the ground. So it's not only a more humane approach,
I think,
it's far more effective.
I've like looked at polling that like the idea, it shows that like Western activists always have this thing, oh, I'm not anti-Semitic, but I'm anti-Zionist. But it looks like from the polling, most Palestinians are anti-Semitic, not really anti-Zionist or anti-occupation. So would you condemn them for that?
No, the same way I don't condemn most Israelis for harboring some Islamophobic sentiment. Generally, you're gonna have some negative sentiment against the people you don't like. So Palestinians have been in conflict with the Jewish state and with Jewish people for 100 years. That's nearly impossible to do without having some negative sentiment towards those people. The same way Israelis are very Islamophobic because of their experience fighting different Muslim countries and Palestinians for 100 years. In fact, and again, this is one of my biggest disagreements with many on the left, is I'm actually quite tolerant towards not towards rhetoric that's demonizing, but I accept like prejudice is just very natural. Whether you're racist, Islamophobic, or anti-Semitic, that doesn't mean you're by default a bad person. It doesn't mean you're nefarious. I'm quite tolerant towards those views. Now, if you then have those views and are using a platform that I'm hosting in order to demonize that person, then I will feel some obligation to step in and stop it. But I mean, I understand why prejudice exists. I mean, we're very wired to generalize groups, and our experience often leads us to those conclusions. Hating those people doesn't change them. The best way for Palestinians to feel better about Jews is for them to start having positive interactions with Jews, and vice versa. It's not, you don't need to have, it's not having some kind of like Holocaust education in the Palestinian school system. That's not going to change much if they still wait at checkpoints and face settler violence, right? If the Jews you're meeting day after day don't treat you with dignity and respect, that's your impression of Jews. But if you start to build ties with Jews and have Jewish friends and work with them, then you start to feel very differently about Jews. So,
but it's like I heard most of like the citizens of Israel like have like big complaints of the state, but still won't have like generalizing anti-Semitic views, though.
Well, exactly, because they're living amongst Jews.
Well, the Palestinians occupied don't, but do have generalized about views.
But do you understand why, though? That's exactly my point, right? The interactions West Bank Palestinians have with the Jews are overwhelmingly negative. The interactions Palestinian citizens of Israel have with Jews are mixed, but very positive interactions all around. And that doesn't mean they don't face discrimination or racism, but I mentioned this at the beginning of the stream. The only population living between the river and the sea that was overwhelmingly against October 7th and Israel's response to October 7th are Palestinian citizens of Israel, because they have some connection to both groups, right? So most Palestinians.
Would you include Jews in that, or no?
No. Druze are not, overwhelmingly not critical of Israel's actions in Gaza. They are more right-wing than the average Jewish Israeli, I would say. So no, Druze are not in that category.
What do other Palestinian citizens think of Druze, though?
It depends where. Here in the Galilee, Well, I guess I'm not in the Galilee now. I took a vacation to Cyprus, but where I live in the Galilee, it's all harmony between us, but there's tension in both directions. Many Muslims view Druze as traitors because Druze is an offshoot of Islam. Druze have been oppressed by Muslim populations. Druze are also very loyal to whatever state they're living in, so they're loyal to the state of Israel, and so they have something against those who aren't loyal. So there's definitely tension, but where I live, you don't feel that tension. Everyone's friends.
Is there a difference between like Christian and Muslim Palestinians you've seen? Is there?
Yeah, Christians are more
Like the relationship with Jews?
Yeah, Christians.
In terms of the relationship with Jews, yeah.
Yeah, on average, Christian Palestinians are more likely to be supportive of the state than Muslims. I think on average, you could say that with, yeah. So there's some small differences. I will tell you, I started going to different neighborhoods in the Galilee, and the theme is, and I'll upload this at some point because I'm filming it. But I drive to a random village until someone invites me in for coffee. And I go to Christian villages, Druze villages. I'll go to Jewish villages or towns, and people are just so nice. But one of the themes that I hear from Palestinian citizens of Israel, they say, yeah, I consider myself Israeli and I like being Israeli, but I'm not a Zionist because why would I support a Jewish state? I'm not Jewish. I want it to be a state for all the people. So they do have a real grievance, despite them wanting to stay on the land, wanting to be part of society. They still don't feel fully part of society. So there's definitely work that needs to happen from within to better include the 20% non-Jewish population. But they're not hateful towards, they invite me in for coffee. They love to share and talk, and just all around nice people.
So you said it's the same with Muslims and Christians, or you said there's difference? Like...
No, I mean, in the warmth and hospitality I've received, I haven't seen any difference. I just know it's more common for Christian Palestinians to join the IDF. I think
aren't they generally wealthier too, though? More well off?
I'm not sure about that. What also is interesting is there's a fair bit of organized crime in some Palestinian towns, and it's not in the Christian towns, it's in the Muslim towns. But you also have organized crime in the Druze communities and in the Jewish communities. So Christians are, unless someone can find evidence contrary to what I'm saying, but I looked into it and asked around. The only group that doesn't seem to have like organized crime seems to be Christian Palestinian citizens of Israel for some reason. So they seem to be walking in the footsteps of Jesus. But just to show that religion is not the most important factor, you've had no shortage of Palestinian Christians engage in terror against Israel, and you've had no shortage of Muslim Palestinians join the IDF. So the conflict is not a problem in Islam or Judaism. This is a human conflict that we often use religion to strengthen our belief or justify certain things, but anybody trying to make it seem like this is just Islam and that's the problem, I don't think there's any real basis to that.
Have you met any Circassians?
Not yet, but I do want to go to their community. For those who don't know, the Circassians are they're from the Caucasus region, I believe. Sunni Muslims that got
Circassians?
Yeah. Are you asking if that's how it's pronounced, or are you saying they're not from that area?
If that's what you're talking about.
Yeah. What's it pronounced in English? Because in Hebrew we say Cherkessim, so I just thought it was Circassian.
I don't know. Some people pronounce it Circassian.
Okay.
It might be different. I guess like in the Caucasus in Russia, they might pronounce it very differently.
Right. So
what about
they live within Israel, and they're Muslim. They're Caucasus, like ethnically Caucasus Muslims, and I don't know if most, but a lot of them serve in the IDF. So I really want to go visit their community as well. Um,
Have you read any of the Samaritans?
yeah. Abud Cohen is a friend of mine. He's one of the advocates of that community.
What side of the conflict do they consider themselves on, like the Israeli or Palestinian side?
They present themselves as peacemakers. At least Abud, like we are not taking a side. We're on the side of peace. To me, though, it's unclear how honest they can be without facing some backlash from either Israel or Palestinians. So I think they're stuck in a tough place. But what a population to be the bridge, because they are very indigenous to the land. There's I think it's a dumb conversation of who's the most indigenous, but if anyone's most indigenous, it's them. They have maintained.
Well, I've heard people say, well, the Jews are from the land, while Palestinians are from Arabia.
Yeah,
that's what the comment.
Yeah, that's just not historically accurate. It's not supported by DNA testing that we've done. On average, Palestinians have more Levantine DNA than Jews, but both Jews and Palestinians have significant Levantine DNA. We're long lost brothers and sisters.
I hear see all these Hezbollah accounts during the term Jews are from Judea, Arabs are from Arabia. Yeah, is what I've seen a lot.
Yeah, I get it. Most Hispanics aren't from Spain. It's dumb. Arab is a cultural category. It's not a geographical category. People who speak Arabic and who have been Arabized are what's called Arabs. The same way Hispanics are not from Spain. They're people who speak Spanish. But most Hispanics are not from Spain. It's a similarly ridiculous argument. It shouldn't be taken seriously.
I guess people who speak English aren't from Western Germany, right? That's where the English language emerged. English is a Germanic language. Most people who speak English aren't from Western Germany.
Yeah, no. That's just a dumb argument. We shouldn't take that seriously. And it's also your human rights should not be dependent on your genetics, right? That's just a poor way of looking at it. The only reason I bring up genetics is because it does dispel. It's the easiest way to dispel the myth, A, that Jews are just Khazars or from Poland, and B, that Arabs are from Arabia. No, we see that we both come from this land. And I think if we could frame this conflict, if we could start to see each other as long lost family, I think it's framing that can help us reconcile. Now, that's not.
There's some people who think that it's necessary to just delegitimize Jewish connection to the land because they see that as the justification for, what Israel's done,
Right, yeah, I think that's where the objection comes from, because connection to the land is used as a means to violate other people's rights, so people are naturally going to reject it. If in the face of a peaceful resolution, people are not going to be denying Jewish connection to the land. It's simply we're in an ideological battle, and if you say this is my land because I come from here, naturally people are going to question that. But that's going to end if there's a solution. Maybe some people still might, but it's going to lose its oxygen. That's how you take the oxygen out of that argument. And
so would you consider?
In fact,
would you consider Jews indigenous? Seeing more of the thing as Israel's a settler colonial project, or
Oh, I actually think both. I think Zionism is an indigenous rights movement that achieved their goals by engaging in settler colonialism. So Zionism is a settler colonialist movement, just carried out by an indigenous population. It's not people think you need to be one or the other, but why can't you be both?
Liberia, I guess, was that too.
Let me give you an example. Let's say you have some population that was displaced from Texas into Mexico, and that population saw an opportunity to retake land in Mexico, but it necessitated the displacement of many native Texans. That would be an indigenous rights movement engaging in settler colonialism.
Isn't that kind of what Liberia was in Africa?
Yeah. Liberia is a great example. You know, it wasn't just they were returning to a geographic location that's in the general vicinity of where they came from, and they did so with settler colonialism. Yeah. Anyways, I'm gonna wrap this up, but feel free to hop in the chill room for those watching on stream if you want to continue the conversation. Link in bio or in the description. Thank you all for tuning in. Yuri saying Texas didn't have Mexico's. What do you mean? Texas used to be Mexico, and that's not true. You did have some native populations displaced from Texas into Mexico. I think it's a very relevant example. In terms of my next live stream, I'm not sure. I'm in Cyprus until the weekend, but maybe I'll do another one this week. Anyways, with that, signing off, not from the beautiful land of Israel and Palestine, but the beautiful island of Cyprus. And